Yes.
It's not a name. I'm sorry.
Do you want people to tell you who they know?
Yeah, it's called abscondita.
That's not true.
Anyone listening, tell Ndu who you know is called abscondita.
Yeah.
And any other closely related names. I don't know anyone called Ndu.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I am one of a kind, unique in nature.
Same way you don't know anyone called abscondita.
Is that English?
No,
Is that an English name?
It's just a name.
No, but is it in English?
No.
All your names, every name comes from a language. Absconding is a word, I understand that, but why would you name your child
Abscondita?
Nah, come on, guys.
It sounds good, flows.
No, it does not.
The tongue loves it.
Why any serious?
Abscondita.
I'm just checking right now. Just prove to you.
There is someone called
Yes,
abscondita.
and what that name means. Well, I'm not sure whether it's English. Dennis, you can't be a millennial. How are you?
I'm a Y. I'm a Gen Y.
What is that?
Yeah,
We're
see.
just making up stuff this
See,
morning.
after millennial, there's Gen Y, then Gen Z.
Okay.
And then Alpha.
Sour bus. Look how Dennis is looking
You're
at
the
you.
generation like they're not confused, like the
Yeah,
between.
in between.
In between.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like the lost generation. We talk Gen Z and
Millennials.
millennials.
Oh, yeah, we don't talk about the wise.
No.
Okay. Ni sawa too.
Yeah. But since in
Actually,
the
abscondita.
No.
This is too funny. Wait, abscondita is a firefly in tropical Asia.
You see?
It's a fly.
Thank you.
it's a firefly.
Then
Well-
you name your child.
Well, we are known to call children by names of animals.
Yeah, Simba.
Where I come from, the people who call their children, no, their sons, Nyangau.
Yeah, Sibur.
That's okay.
Lion.
Sawa. Simba. Yeah, sawa. Tunajua hizo vitu. Lakini, have you ever heard that somebody names their child after a firefly?
Abscondita.
If people can name their children after, like what? Fisi,
Yeah.
That's what I'm
a
saying.
baboon,
Oh, no. You see now that's not fair.
a tail.
Yeah.
Wow, this is very interesting.
It's an insect. I had no idea.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's in a different language as well.
Abscondita, my darling.
Maybe it's
No.
inspirational, like, you will always fly in your life.
Yeah. And you'll always send fire while at
And
it.
yes.
That's really deep. That's really rich. Well done. I have to give it to you. Wait. Okay. Good one. Lakini, you guys, you're fine.
Good.
Fantastic. Good to see you. I actually did notice that the weather is doing a drop. I think we're getting into an early Kenyan winter, as it were. June going into July, it's getting just a little bit colder, and it's likely to do the thing, folks. So this is said to be, it's going to be one of the coldest years yet.
Yeah, it's changing. When the other day I was just driving to Mwingi, and the weather from Matuja suddenly changed.
Yeah.
And it was all of a sudden very cold. This is around 10 in the morning.
Yep.
When you'd expect the temperatures to be very high. So,
Yeah.
yes, we are getting there.
You know, when you're getting to headed towards Matu and Mwingi is cold. Bro, it's really cold.
Yeah, it's cold.
It's really cold.
It's cold. But I
that
prefer
area,
this weather, to be
yeah.
honest.
I prefer the cold weather.
Yeah.
Huh.
Fun fact, I
Cold
worked
showers,
in
cold
Matu,
weather.
Dalani for a year. Me, Ndu.
Ndu.
Anyway, we'll talk about it another day, another time.
Okay.
The live stream was doing the thing, guys. So I know it kicked a lot of people out of the room, but back up now and everybody's coming back in. So come back in. Let's say good morning to one another. I didn't even tell you where we are. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. And it's your first Thursday because tomorrow we have been given another holiday. Ama namnagani Lydiah. Atujui.
Fantastic.
Lydiah saying,
Yeah. No, we stand with our brothers and sisters.
thank you very much.
Yeah, tomorrow is Eid, so yeah.
Exactly. It's the day
know,
for
today I'm
it's
fasting,
Salah. It's Salah. So
Salah.
we have to eat meat. I
Eid
cannot be
al-Adha.
eating meat while we're here. Abi?
You're not supposed to be fasting tomorrow on Friday.
Today.
No, it's today they're fasting.
Depends. Depends.
It's today they're fasting.
You fast today. Tomorrow is Eid.
Yep.
Salah. So, my friend, Lydia, I'm just keep looking at you. I look at you well, you do the thing. So, we have a number of conversations today, and we're going to get into them. Let me just tell you what those will be, and then we can get into it. Isn't it?
Isn't it?
It is. Boy, sometimes my phone can embarrass me who tries to be put together, showing people that I know what I'm doing. Then the phone says, it's not, you see? Nonsense things doing me this morning. Okay, voila, there we are. All right, so it is Thursday, so it's Justice Thursday. We will be having a Justice Thursday conversation, but taking a different trajectory today. We will be speaking with constitutional lawyer Degwa Jiro at 8 a.m. I'm starting in the middle of things. He will join us at 8, and we will be looking at Justice on Trial, the case of Rose Jerry, and what exactly is happening here. That takes form of our Justice Thursday conversation, some of the things that we'll be doing, looking at legal issues as well as cases that are currently in the limelight, what it all means, what we're all going into. That's what we'll do at 8 o'clock. And then at 7 a.m., Cornelius Chepsoy. In fact, Lydia, I was going to ask you if we could find that video. Lydia, hello? I was going to ask you if we can find that video, if we can, maybe. There was a video that went viral a couple of days ago. A gentleman who was talking about a number of things when he's a businessman and he was in a forum. Which county was he addressing? He was addressing folks in the government basically and asking them to be accountable for certain things. He will join us at 7 a.m. today. His name is Cornelius Chepsoy, and we'll be talking about the voice of Wajiko, one voice, millions heard. And we'll go into the details of what he said. Basically, no, we are here. This is public participation. You are here to serve us. Let's get us serving. And so he will join us at 7. And then at 9 o'clock, former Agriculture Minister Kipruto Arab Kirwa joined a party over the weekend. This week decided that he's going to join the party that is not being given a chance to launch yet.
DCP?
That's what they're called, Abi. So he is going to have a conversation with us about the right track or dead end, a nation at a crossroads. Is Kenya really at a crossroads in terms of decision making for who's going to be your next tranche of leaders? So he joins us at 9 a.m. for that conversation. Yes, Chepsoy at 7, Degwa at 8, and Kirwa at 9. Those are conversations we have this morning. And of course, as you trickle into the room, join us. All of you, our live streams on Facebook, YouTube, and on X are live, and we'll join our audiences on KTN from 7. We are still in Eswatini. I know that everybody just thinks about the reed dance that happens in the summer. But there's more to the nation, no?
Like what?
Can you imagine?
Like what? What else do we know?
They have natural beauty.
Well,
and wildlife.
No, I mean, wildlife is everywhere in Africa. That's just too obvious. Trees, mountains, hills, rivers.
Yeah.
Lakes.
They're the only
What
of
else?
two nations surrounded entirely by another nation.
Yeah.
Is that not unique
That's just geography.
in Africa? Yeah, but
What else do we
if
know about the
anything,
people?
they've sold that thing properly to the world.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that maybe more happens than the reed dance in Eswatini. But,
I mean, for years and years, it still fascinates.
it does.
Yeah.
It does,
Exactly.
yeah.
They do the same thing every year, but every year it's very interesting for lots of people to watch.
But even South Africa, I mean, their dance, the Zulu dance,
Yeah.
and all that. Fascinates
Amazing.
Fascinates,
everyone.
yeah.
Amazing.
What fascinates the world about Kenya? Any type
Athletes.
of dance?
Hey, like let me tell you
Yeah,
something.
Mapangale.
Before I came here,
What is Mapangale?
Wow. Okay. Let's continue.
I don't even know what that is.
You don't know what Oh my God. You don't know what Mapangale is?
What is Mapangale?
It's the lesser thing that is being danced here by Gen Zs.
What are those?
It's a dance.
Okay. How do they do it? Do you know?
It's Mapangale, you know.
Oh, the thing-
Mapangale, yeah.
So like chopping people's necks or what?
Kinda.
and that's a dance.
It is a dance.
Oh, okay.
It's actually huge, if you ask me.
So
Give it 2 weeks. Something like that.
something else will happen. I'm
Yeah.
telling you. No, but I do think that Kenya has quite a lot
Yeah.
that you look at and you see. And I think, oh my goodness, I think there is quite a lot that Kenya has on offer.
I mean, the fact that Nairobi in its own self has a national park in the capital, I mean, it's spoken all over the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't sell that enough.
At all.
Yeah.
To be honest, we don't.
We don't.
Let
Our
me tell you the
coffee is the
truth.
best.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Cyprus, walked into a coffee shop, and I was looking at the menu. Kenyan coffee was the most expensive. It's so premium. It was
Yeah.
3 times the price in euros compared to the other coffees.
There you go. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I think sometimes you just don't know what you have on offer, especially when you've not been outside of the country, then to understand really what Kenya has. Always something to be grateful for, I say. Yeah. But we're in Eswatini, so share today's proverb with you.
Eswatini, the proverb today: the antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit. The antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit.
Sometimes you got to take a minute to stop and look around and then decide what your next step is.
Exactly.
Stop at some point. My people say that the chicken that has just entered the yard stands on one leg first. Looks around before he puts the second leg down.
Yeah.
You have to stop at some point. Take, stock of what you're doing and where you're going, I guess. Otherwise, you'll keep tripping, falling.
My dad says the
Never
bull
get
that keeps on showing as if it's the strongest is the one that is sent to go till the land. Yeah.
For me, it just means restlessness. It will always lead into trouble. Like you never settle on a thing. You never settle on an idea or settle in a place or settle in a relationship, a friendship. You're always moving from one place to another. And so it just eventually means you'll make a costly mistake, because if you keep jumping from one hole to another, eventually there's one you can't come out of.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
That's it, man. Okay. Of course, we'll get views around folks and their interpretations of that as we go through the day. How about we say hello to you guys? Cindy, folks who've clicked in this morning. Yes, I know, guys. We're back in and the live stream, so just keep picking it up and we'll say hello to who is in the room so far. Sawa. It is actually Thursday. I know you want to think that it's Friday. I know what you're saying in terms of another Friday. Yes, that's what we are looking at today. So good morning. We back in. Tibbs says, yes, we are. Good morning from Ambassador. Robert Mbogo is here. The African Queen says, good morning, family. Well, good morning, sister. Good morning, Spices. Things that are happening in this country. Pause to lambe glucose quants. Young Jedi. Ready for today's insightful conversation. Salimia Dio na DA. Dio? Huh?
Salimika?
DA?
What up?
Thanks. Mashari and Jerry says, good morning, Spice team. Watching from Portland, Oregon. What's the job description of Kenya's president? What? We can ask ChatGPT. What is the job description of Kenya's president? We'll find out and tell you. Michael Olande says, good morning, Team Spice. Chilly morning in Kigali. Peter Opudo is tuned in from Thika this morning. Let the weekend begin, says Sami Kyoko. Ready for insightful and mature conversations. Thank you so much. George Adimo says, good morning, Spice. Weather very cold. Well, we're going to heat it up in here this morning. That's for sure. Agola, hi, Watu. Hi, Mtu. Simon Kibiru says, good morning. Have a nice day. Thank you so much. Hello, Princess Ndu Aseto. It's Dennis and Lydiah. Illegal thing in Kenya, saying one term but not two term. Creating website for government accountability and civic engagement and having contrary opinions to power. Yeah, it would appear that those things now are illegal. Good morning, Ndu and the gang, says Jackson. That's interesting that you said Ndu and the gang and then your name is Jackson. You get where I'm going, but okay. Erica War says, good morning, guys. Martin Murray says, Leonie Friday, Nakeshoni Friday. Sindio. King Dave Lubale says, good morning, team. Do I say your name right? King Dave, tell me. Do I say Lubale? Do I say it correctly? Just tell me if I do. Abuto Kamla says, good morning, Team Spice. Aseto, bring us goodies on Monday. So
Goodies on Monday?
Yeah.
Okay, so
you'll bring? Bas. He says he'll bring. And we will be here. If you don't bring, we will know. Talking of weather, the UK weather, the only place where you can experience all 4 seasons in 1 hour. I know. You step into London, sometimes it's raining.
Yep.
Then after some time, the sun is shining.
Yeah.
Then Kidogo, it's snowing. And it in the winter.
Then it gets windy.
Yeah, seriously. Crazy. I get it, man. Good morning from Salem, my lovely people, says Dennis. Another Dennis. Hey, just keep adding, no problem. Wangi Juma says, good morning, Team Spice. How are you this blessed Thursday? We're doing all right. Samson Wangi says, good morning, Team Spice. Julius Song says, good morning, Ndu, Dennis, and Aseto. Happy to tune in. Thank you for being here. Peter Wanjala is tuned in. Good morning, Spice team. Tudor, Mombasa, Tuko locked. Atiano says, it raineth in Kilifi. It raineth, it's dry, rocky soils, and happy are happy. Good day. Well, good morning to you. My prince. Good morning, everyone. Have a great weekend. We're already there. Michael Olande says, good morning. You should see the Masai Moran graduation. I'm telling you, it's a spectacular thing to behold. You got men who are jumping 6 feet in the air, the height of another man, and then is able to in a vertical manner, and then just comes down and then goes back up. It's amazing to watch. And those are some of the things I'm talking about.
I haven't seen that one.
You haven't?
No.
It is
you
spectacular to watch in person.
I'll check them out.
It is amazing to see. Solio Cheng, good morning to you. Bwangi Juma, someone aware what happened to the Carnival restaurant? Just remember the tradition of Kenyans. See, Carnival is still there, Amma?
Yeah, it's still there.
It's still there. Saw it.
Yeah.
Not too long ago. Samson Mwangi says, if you keep on changing your goals, objectives, you fall into a pit. That's it. That's the problem today. How did you know? See, that's what we've just said, Amma. K. Onyando says, good morning, Spice family. Hesbon Sidon says, good morning. One waonge wasiwasi.
Hatuna wasiwasi.
Oh, okay. Sawa. King Dave says, it is correct. Ndu, thank you so much. Young Jedi says, a whole matatu was arrested for chanting one time. Imagine. A whole matatu.
If I say 2 term, is that okay? 2 term is not a crime. 1 term is a crime. And end
Depends
term.
on what someone hears.
Yeah. And when you say end term?
End term? End of the term.
What about no term?
Or no term?
Yeah.
Which one is illegal right now?
Yeah.
Atujui. But,
Yeah.
we keep it moving.
Yeah.
Happy Eid, Aseto. Ben Nyawide is greeting you like that.
Sorry, son of Ben Nyalwide.
Joseph Gema says, good morning, my fellow workers in the plantation of Kenya. Yes, we see you guys. Good morning. I know that you'll keep clicking in and talking to us this morning, so keep doing that as we get into things this morning. Let's take 5 minutes, look through just the headlines, come back and look at the meat of these stories. And I'll start on the Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard. You want to see the picture? That's the picture. What does it say? Godfathers have it. What do we mean? MPs yesterday did what they have long been accused of doing, rubber stamping an executive decision, this time on the reconstitution of the IEBC. While the nominees may tick the boxes on paper, Parliament missed a critical opportunity to restore public trust by failing to meaningfully interrogate their political pasts. A more probing vetting process could have gone a long way in assuring Kenyans that those entrusted with overseeing the 2027 polls are not proxies. It would be said that there are folks who are linked to others. There's Raila Odinga, Junet Mohammed, Musalia Mudavadi, President William Ruto. Everybody seems to be crisscrossing, joining somebody, and that's why these people are there, according to the story. We'll look into the details so that we can see how we are making these connections. But it would appear as though Parliament had a responsibility, and many folks feel that Parliament has done what? Let us down. Governor Orengo to lead delegation to State House today. He's been talking and he's been saying, yeah, you guys, but now we're losing it. But it appears that we've not lost it yet, and he's making his way to the house on the hill. Revealed how your child will be evaluated, placed in senior school. We'll look into that. The United Nations is urged to probe police torture in the EAC, and it's being spearheaded by the People's Liberation Party leader Martha Karua. Kemri confirms 25 cases of killer outbreak and is cautioning residents. It's called chikungunya.
Oh, yeah.
It is a disease that is caused by the mosquito. These mosquitoes, Anopheles causes mosquito. Another one causes this one. One mosquito can cause different diseases. Anyway, we'll look at that. It's a mosquito-borne virus. It's resurfaced amid ongoing rains. It comes with the rain and has created breeding grounds, exacerbating the situation. We'll look into that, and folks need to be careful. And that is where we are, at least for the Standard. We'll look into some more stories as we go ahead. Dennis?
Let's go to the Daily Nation, and the headline on the Daily Nation: MPs punch 6 billion shillings hole in school budget. And now here we talk about the National Police Service, the rejected request of 3.5 billion shillings to recruit 10,000 police constables, 9.8 billion shillings for police insurance, 8.1 billion shillings for security operations, and 767 million shillings for pending bills. And Kenya Defence Forces, 13 billion shillings, NIS, 1 billion shillings, as the school's capitation has lose 5.9 billion shillings in capitation. Just what does that mean to the education of the country? Now, why Mbarire is on the warpath, rattling UDA? What began 5 months ago as an ominous warning from Deputy President Kithure Kindiki to Embu Governor Cecily Mbarire is now boiling over, threatening to rock the Kenya Kwanza administration that is struggling to contain a rebellion in Mount Kenya led by former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Mbarire is the chairperson
of UDA.
Of UDA, right? And here we are, money pit, costly repairs at DP's current residence. Hey, this residence has been repaired.
Funny, what do they fix, surely? What's wrong?
You know, because it started way back.
When William Ruto was in the
repair.
It was being repaired, renovated. And before him, remember it was built when Kalonzo Musyoka was the VP. William Ruto moved in, they did things. Then Rigathi Gachagua came and we were told how they were fixing it was falling apart. Now Kindiki has moved in. Just last year they finished Rigathi.
I know.
And then now they're fixing it again.
Anyway, in Nairobi's leafy current suburb, the official residence of Deputy President has quietly become a revolving door of expensive cosmetic makeovers, with taxpayers footing the bill. Wacha tutengeneze heated water pools na curtain ya 1 million. Blind curtains. Okari, una nini?
I'm still on that story. Like, you move into a new house, you want the bedroom to be pink. The paint job will be 3 million.
Yeah.
You don't like the tiles.
Move
bathroom.
them.
I passed by Ngong Road. I saw some new grass. Grass.
I don't like synthetic grass.
Yeah.
I prefer the natural one. So to water the natural grass will cost another 3 million.
I saw some automatic sprinklers at White House in the US. I want that one.
Yeah, I need a gazebo where I'll meet elders. And maybe elders come in the evening. Karen is very cold, so I need heaters, another 5 million.
As if you didn't know before that Karen was cold.
In the Business Daily today, the main headline, VAT collections hit record 32.1 billion after fraud purge. Well, KRA is saying in April they launched a crackdown after doing some audits. And the audits revealed malpractice. So some traders were issuing fictitious invoices to dodge tax obligations. So what did they do? They decided to ramp up the collections, and internal reports by KRA showed that domestic VAT collections from medium and small traders grew sharpest by 39.7%.
In 1 month?
Yes, 6.98 billion in May, while collections from large traders grew by 25.3% to 25.15 billion for the month, lifting the overall collections for the 10 months to May 2025 by 3%.
You know what? We had an economist here, and they said that, KRA was still looking for 800 billion shillings to meet their target. And we said, are they ever on target? And he said to us, you know what? Miraculously, in 1 month, you're going to find that somehow, they would have made something, and this money now would have been gotten. There you are.
Prophecy has come true.
I'm telling you.
So they've done it. So it means if they want to work, they will work. Okay, still on the main front page, Kenya's exports to Uganda fall for the first time in 7 years. So the value of Kenya's exports to Uganda fell for the first time in 7 years between January and March this year, partly reflecting the impact of the tit-for-tat tariff and non-tariff measures in recent years. So trade between Kenya and Uganda has been hurt by on and off retaliatory protectionist measures leading to the blockade of goods at border points. And we still have the EAC dream. So Kenya's traders earned 29.6 billion from goods trucked to Uganda in the first 3 months of the year. Data released by a state-run statistician shows marginally reduced from 29.67 billion and some figures there. The story is on page 2. But I go inside on page 3, how billions worth of gold from DRC Sudan is smuggled via Kenya. So yesterday, I was watching documentaries about this story, just trying to really understand. And these are documentaries done by foreigners. You'll be shocked at what's going on in Sudan and how the gold is moving from Sudan through Kenya. It's ridiculous. And so this report that was done by Swiss Aid shows part of the gold that is smuggled out of South Sudan, the DRC, to a lesser extent Ethiopia, and possibly Sudan, passes through Kenya before being ultimately re-exported, and mainly to Dubai.
See, Let's take a break. You know why? If we start talking now, steam will start coming out of my head. So let's
Cement you?
Well, when you see things happening, you don't know where you actually are. But
So Kenya is a player in gold market.
the whole country is a mule.
Wow.
It's 22 minutes to 7. We'll look at more of these stories, and maybe we need to start with that one proper. And we'll come back after this short break. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Is Kenya's healthcare system reaching its full potential? Groundbreaking research is happening, but is it making a difference where it matters most? This Thursday, the Situation Room tackles this head on. Join Ndu and Aseto for a candid discussion with Jeremiah Ngada and Noel Orata from Ideal. They're revealing the secrets to turning research into real policy change. Discover how Ideal is making a difference, the truth behind policy making, why ignoring evidence is a risk we can't afford, and actionable strategies for researchers to influence decisions that impact your health. Plus, the key ingredients: community buy-in and political will. Want to see a stronger, healthier Kenya built on evidence and action? Tune in to the Situation Room this Thursday, May the 15th, and get the insights you need.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
It is actually June the 5th, but we move regardless, isn't it? Okay, so we're looking into stories that are making the headlines this morning. Dennis, let's start with that gold story, because what?
That story, like I said, I was just watching. I just wanted to understand a bit more from a foreign perspective of what exactly is going on in Sudan, because obviously of access.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that is not being told. Now, the Swiss Aid released a report talking about how billions worth of gold from DRC, we know what's going on in DRC, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Sudan, we know what's going on in Sudan.
Yeah.
Okay. So the gold is smuggled through Kenya. So Kenya's exports of the precious metal between 2014 and 2023 were nowhere close. Let me repeat this. The exports of gold between 2014 and 2023 were nowhere close to the massive gold imports recorded by a number of countries worldwide. But in this report, they talk about last year alone, a consignment of over 3,000 kilograms of gold from DRC worth 43 billion. That is with a B. Mysteriously vanished at JKIA. Mysteriously vanished at JKIA. Now, according to Swiss Aid, they suggest that high-ranking state officials in Kenya are involved in smuggling schemes because such large volumes of precious metal rarely, if ever, disappear without a trace. If you travel through any airport in the world and you're carrying gold, and I've gone to India a few times, and you will look at reports where Kenyans are trying to smuggle gold into India because of the consumption in India. You're not even talking about kilograms. You will be spotted at the airport and you'll be arrested. Many Kenyans have been arrested in New Delhi.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Now, here in Kenya, 3,000 kilos just disappear and officials can't find where it is. So this report says that part of the gold that is smuggled out of South Sudan, we know the conflict there.
Yeah.
The DRC, we know the conflict there. And to a larger extent, Ethiopia. Possibly Sudan, they're passing through Kenya before being ultimately re-exported to other countries.
Do you know how much 3,000? You see, 3,000 kilograms. Do you know how much gold that is? Like if you wear, like my earrings now, this, like this, just this.
21K.
Yeah, but you know, when you are measuring, it's minuscule.
Yes.
Okay, it's very, 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 very little. but very, very expensive, right? And that's how we talk about how it's being traded. 3,000 kilograms of gold leaving Kenya will be noticed. If it is being moved without anybody's permission, it means that somebody has granted that exit to happen.
Now, that is one incident.
Yes.
Listen to the next one. Data reported by individual countries to the UN trade database, on the other hand, they show 60,000 kilograms of gold valued at 842 billion Kenya shillings was imported from Kenya over the same period. Yes.
Imported.
From Kenya over the same period.
You see, when you try to connect dots on these two stories, I come from the fact that we know Kenya is not a big player in the gold sector. So we're talking about 3 kgs of gold. That means in a country that does not deal with gold, it is highly protected substance in the country. For it to just disappear, bro, someone took it away.
So there's that one that disappeared.
It disappeared, yeah.
There is now this
Official.
data showing this is just passing through Kenya.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, you're a mule.
Yeah.
So we are basically the playing field that's allowing this to pass through.
Yes.
But all this money, where is it going?
Where does it go?
Where is this money going? What is the exchange? Because a lot of the documentaries you're watching, arms are also moving through. So it's an exchange. It's like barter trade. So give me gold, I'm going to give you arms.
Yeah.
So you have to pass the arms somewhere.
And you know, we can't, we often forget that. So I study peace and conflict, right? There is no conflict. There's no conflict that doesn't have a resource base to it. And that there is no conflict where individuals or sectors of people are not benefiting. You talk about arms and weapons trade. You talk about resource rich. You talk about, so the two sides that have been essentially brought into this conflict, there's somebody who's benefiting on the side. So when the conflict is happening, what resources are leaving nations and how are they moving to have those who are on the periphery then benefiting from the sale of those resources? You can never just look at a conflict as just a conflict.
Yeah.
What is happening? Because you need to normally stir the waters for this thing that you want to do to benefit you. And we see that.
You know, there's a time, I think a while back, in the DRC conflict, there was this peacekeeping vehicle that was a tanker that was moving, right, going back to base, and it had an accident. So when locals went to rescue individuals who were in that tanker, guess what they got? They found diamonds in sacks in that tanker going back to base.
Wow.
You know, so now here that is DRC with its conflict, and you're talking about now. Look at connections that is happening between Kenya, Sudan, and the war, and everything that we see. And look at even the warring parties in Sudan and the areas that they want to protect is where gold mining is actually happening. Then are you shocked that gold is actually passing through Kenya?
Now, this is the next interesting thing. So we know where the gold is coming from. It's from conflict regions or conflict countries.
Yes.
Where there's conflict and where there's war, there are people who are making money.
100%.
And you're, of course, selling arms, bombs, and
ammunition,
anything used in warfare. Now, here's the thing. The statistic I just gave you, they say this indicates an average of 6,000 kilograms of gold, which was imported from Kenya every year. Now, almost 10 times the average amount recorded by Kenyan authorities. So what is on the official records is different from these other figures I've just mentioned. It's 10 times more. However, and this is every year, so this is highlighting the huge levels of illicit flow. Now, another inconsistency in this data is this one, the destination. Now, according to the Kenyan reports, a lot of this gold is going to South Africa, which is a top export market, which takes up 76% in 2023. Now, Pretoria barely reports any gold imports from Kenya over that same period.
And it said that this gold is going to South Africa.
Yeah, we're saying it's going to South Africa.
And we also know that South Africa is a major exporter of gold.
Yes. And Pretoria is saying, wait a minute, we are not receiving this from Kenya. Now, instead, 97% of official reported gold imports from Kenya are going to United Arab Emirates. And you talk about UAE, that's another whole story.
Yeah.
How they've enabled the smuggling of gold from not just these countries through Kenya, but from other nations.
Remember, there is also allegations that UAE is busy supplying weapons to the conflict-ridden regions.
And how do those weapons move to these conflict regions?
Exactly.
Again, you're using the same transit
Channel.
hub.
Mule, Kenya. You know how you say individuals are mules, they carry balloons in there. Kenya, it looks like it's an entire mule, whether it's ammunition, whether it's drugs, whether it's gold trade. But you know the thing is, I keep saying, look at the slave trade. The slave trade that happened across Africa. That these people didn't just come and pick people and go. There was somebody who was facilitating for them to have to go. Yes. The chiefs were used to have people then taken away. It's the same thing. We can't just say that gold is finding its way out of Kenya. Somebody is facilitating for it to leave. Somebody is allowing it to go. Somebody is allowing somebody to pick it up from point A to point X and then allowing it to exit the country. That is happening with somebody's permission and facilitation. Guys, this one, telenovela, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Pro Max.
The gold that comes from Kenya, we say we produce, is mined from Migori, from Narok, from Oma Bay.
Oma Bay,
Siaya, Kakamega, and Vihiga counties, most of which is extracted through our very
artisanal miners.
Yes. And so you look at the report, for instance, Kenya's gold production recorded by the State Department for Mining in 2003 was 410 kilos. Okay?
The whole
410
year. The whole year.
Yes.
Yeah.
410. What are these other figures I've been telling you?
3,000.
6,000, 3,000. So, KRA, according to KRA, 385 kilograms were recorded. You talk about cooking books.
Boss, this one.
We are cooking. This is a story for another day. Like a whole discussion.
It's a whole discussion around it. And I think we actually need to look into it. Where is Lydiah? I'm even waving at her. That gold story, we need to look into it. She has even waved at me. I like this chick. Okay, you know what? There's a problem with mosquitoes. So, different mosquitoes, different species of mosquitoes cause different diseases. We know that the Anopheles mosquito causes malaria. We also know that there is another kind of mosquito which causes this disease, dengue fever, and then there's what is called chikungunya. An outbreak now has hit Mombasa County, with health officials confirming at least 25 positive cases following lab analysis at the Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI. The mosquito-borne virus has resurfaced amid ongoing rains, which had created breeding grounds, exacerbating the situation. Out of 50 suspected cases, 45 samples were tested, revealing 1 case of dengue fever and 25 of chikungunya, according to the Ministry of Health. The most affected counties are Mvita, Kisauni, Nyali, and Likoni, where county officials have activated emergency response teams and launched fumigation exercises. Should have done it before, but okay. Residents are being urged to eliminate mosquito breeding sites, cover water storage containers, and use mosquito nets to prevent further spread. We've had malaria and dengue fever before, but chikungunya presents with more severe joint pain and swelling, often accompanied by a rash. It wasn't as prevalent last year, but the ongoing rains have led to a sharp increase in cases, and that's why we need to conduct DNA PCR testing at KEMRI. This is according to Dr. Saumu Wayua, who is the Acting Director of Public Health and Disaster Prevention. So there's a lot of this going on at the coast in terms of now fumigation and asking people to, and I think we need to share in that because of the mosquito-borne diseases, chikungunya is actually one of the most severe and one of the worst, right? And it can actually, the malaria can find its way into other organs, which other malaria can, but as it finds its way into other organs, you then have severe symptoms that could actually be fatal, right? So the best defense, rather the best treatment here is actually prevention. And so if you can eliminate the water sources, do the fumigation.
You know what makes it complicated? There's a way I was just feeling, honestly. And when I was looking at that story, I was like, okay, could we be having chikungunya in Nairobi as well? I have no idea. But what makes the symptoms a bit more tricky and complicated for a lot of people is where, because you're talking about high fever, joint pain, fatigue,
swelling,
and all that, rashes, those same symptoms, you can get them from these other infections. However, because they overlap the dengue symptoms and they also overlap the
malaria,
Zika, and COVID, then it makes diagnosis tricky.
Very.
You know, so you might actually end up losing lives to chikungunya, but you will not even know because diagnosing is a bit
tricky.
It's difficult.
But you see, when we talk,
the delay for treatment also makes it even worse.
Yeah. You see, chikungunya has been in the coast for a very long time now, and ICPAC has, which is led by IGAD, has been sending weather reports on the rains, how it will be coming, the intensity and whatnot. And with that, one would hope that Disaster Management Authority, the Ministry of Health, would move in to ensure that fumigation actually happened before the rains got here. That all these things happened. We should not now be rushing to fumigate after the fact.
Let me tell you a personal story. So I was in India in a city called Bangalore. And every evening when I would take a walk, I would notice like white smoke everywhere.
Yes.
So, you know, when you come from places of pollution, you're thinking, wait, this is serious pollution. Until I asked, I've noticed every evening this is happening.
Yeah.
No. The state has every day budgeted for fumigation because of the same thing of the mosquitoes.
Yes.
Every evening at 6 p.m. without fail, all the estates, their trucks fumigating every day without fail. It's budgeted for to prevent this kind of situation we are now seeing at the coast. So it's not reactionary.
Yes.
It's planned.
It is planned. Even at the coast, if you visit the hotels at around 6:30, you actually send an alert. We will be fumigating from 6:30 to around 7. So just be aware in case you see smoke. It happens at the coast by private individuals.
Yeah. We have so many institutions, organizations whose job it is to collect data and information. The thing is that how do we translate the collection of that data and information to actually work for us? And I think that usually is the bottleneck in terms of our operations. And it is not just a Kenya thing. You know, it is, unfortunately, we see this around the continent more so than anywhere else in the world. And what do we do with the information that we gather? Our taxes pay people to sit and crunch the numbers, to watch patterns, to collect the data information. Are we saying that all the work that they do is an exercise in futility? Kemri does this fantastic work day in day. We went to the Kemri labs. You guys, it's unbelievable what these people do. What Kemri folks do in terms of collection of information and data, this data should actually be translated into power. That you can then say, guys, this is the trend. Because you can imagine what Kemri does on this side. You can imagine what Kenya Meteorological Department, which, by the way, those guys are really up to some good work, some proper work. So you can imagine a combination of this information that you now say, fine, Ministry of Health here. Now, based on that, you also do have experts who can take that information and data, translate it into action to do now what you're talking about. That we know the rains will come. The rains are not surprising us. Kenya Met told us in February that there would be extended and intensive rain come April, May. They told us. So what do you do with that early warning? They're called early warning systems for a reason. What you do with that information is that you now say, because of this intensified rain, this, and this is likely to happen because we have seen it before. So what do? You
plan. You see, there's that proverb. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And we've done that year in, year out. I'm not surprised, honestly.
What do we do with the information? And then we then complain and we run after the fact. It's reactionary in terms of now what we're doing. Fumigate now. Well, the guy's already there. They've already breeded.
Yeah.
So breeded. Is breeded or what? Bread.
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 Yeah.
They can. Okay.
They can even breed it. It's okay.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Okay, please. You said that they are cutting capitation. The one that we didn't even have it complete.
Yes.
Please tell us that story.
Yeah. You know what? For exams, that was budgeted for. But anyway, in a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul, MPs raided the capitation for learners in public schools to finance examination, administration and invigilation in the 2025-2026 budget. Examination, administration and invigilation in public schools requires 11 billion shillings, but these had not been allocated in the National Treasury's estimates, prompting MPs to reallocate some funds from schools capitation. In a report on the estimates, the Budget and Appropriations Committee of the National Assembly reduced the capitation for schools by 5.9 billion shillings, secondary school by 3 billion shillings and junior schools 2 billion shillings and primary schools 900 million shillings, while the MP's move is part of fiscal consolidation measures aimed at balancing the 4.2 trillion shillings budget for the next financial year. The reduction in capitation will affect learners from poor families, as many of them depend on these funds for their education. Here is the issue. We know very well that the education sector, there is teachers to be paid, there are exams to be invigilated and all this. How then do we make a budget without having monies that will go into invigilation and supervising the very same exams?
Let me tell you guys, the answer to all these things we're asking, we need to go back. Yeah? Before this drama and all these conversations, we need to go back and ask the question, why wasn't examination funding planned for in the initial national budget?
Yes.
You can't ignore a budget for examination. Then later, it's almost like an afterthought and say, hey, because we now don't have money here, let's chop here, let's chop there, let's chop here. From within, it's almost like saying in your house you have a budget for doing your shopping, for food, for clothes, school fees, rent, and all that. Water bills, electricity bills. So water, electricity, and rent, they are all under one umbrella. Is then saying, well, I don't have enough rent for this month. Wacha nitoe stima niongeze kwa rent.
You live in darkness.
Yes.
Wacha nipunguze shopping.
Oh,
and you see now when we hear the entire conversation on that parents will have to go into their pockets to pay for exam fees, now we understand where that conversation is coming.
We've already gone into our pockets because you didn't give us capitation. We've already gone into our pockets. And I'm telling you, look, I have a daughter in a national school. We've gone into our pockets 30,000 shillings extra because of this thing. Now you want us to go further? There's no pocket. There's no pocket left.
So there's no capitation. So now there's no capitation. There is no exam.
It's
40K.
It's
40K.
Shh! Don't depress me.
Sorry, boss.
It's 1 minute past 7. Good morning.
A group of civil society organizations has raised concerns over budget proposals in the 2025 finance bill that, if passed, will reduce funding for essential programs. Through their umbrella body Ndu Okoh campaign, the more than 10 organizations have criticized the looming budget cuts targeting key programs in various sectors, including education, agriculture and security. Speaking on Wednesday during a breakfast meeting in Nairobi, the group noted that the proposed 4.3 billion shillings budget cut to the allocation for free primary education will negatively impact on the school feeding program and put the academic progress of vulnerable children in jeopardy. Although they commended the additional 6 billion shillings and 5 billion shillings to the primary healthcare fund and emergency, chronic and critical illness fund respectively, they warned that the allocation for the free maternity program Linda Mama could miss in the 2025-2026 budget.
This critical program has contributed to an increase in the number of women delivering in health facilities under the care of skilled birth attendants over time. Furthermore, we observe that there is no change in the budget allocation for the National AIDS Control Program, despite the 9.4 billion shillings shortfall in HIV funding due to the recent United States government stop work order.
A chikungunya outbreak has hit Mombasa County, with health officials confirming at least 25 positive cases following laboratory analyses at the Kenya Medical Research Institute. The mosquito-borne virus has resurfaced amid ongoing rains, which have created widespread breeding grounds, exacerbating the situation. Out of 50 suspected cases, 45 samples were tested, revealing 1 case of dengue fever and 25 of chikungunya, according to the Ministry of Health. The most affected sub-counties are Mvita, Kisauni, Nyali and Likoni. County officials have activated emergency response teams and launched fumigation exercises in the worst-hit areas. They've called on residents to eliminate mosquito breeding sites, cover water storage containers and use mosquito nets to prevent further spread.
Chikungunya maumivu yake huwa ni makali zaidi na sana sana kwenye viungo, na mtu huenda ikatokea pia akapata kufura katika zile viungo, sehemu ambazo pengine inauma, na pia anaweza kuwa na pia rashes, kuwa na mkurupuko wa huu, kwa sababu saa hizi wakati wa mvua kuna uzalishaji mkubwa wa mbu wanazaana kwa wingi sana katika mazingira ambazo tunakaa kwenye majumba.
Jikinge na mbu, kwa sababu mbu habebi ugonjwa mmoja peke yake ambao tunauongelea sahihi. Mbu anabeba maradhi ya malaria, anaweza kusambaza maradhi ya dengue fever. Kwa hivyo ni jukumu letu kuhakikisha kwa mazingira yetu ni masafi, kuhakikisha kuwa tumetoa vidimbwi vya maji katika mazingira yetu.
The Wiper Party has called for investigations into an incident in which nominated MCA Jacinta Mweni was assaulted last Sunday during a funeral service in Kitui East. In a statement, Wiper Secretary General Shahula Abdallah condemned the incident and called on law enforcement agencies to ensure those responsible are brought to justice. Abdallah said the assault reflects an alarming pattern of political intimidation and misogyny, noting that Mweni was targeted by individuals allegedly linked to a rival political party. A video on social media shows 4 men approaching the MCA who take the microphone from her before pushing her right after concluding her tribute. Officials in Tanzania have dismissed as mere personal opinions allegations by activist Boniface Mwangi and his Ugandan counterpart Agatha Tuhaire that they were tortured and sexually assaulted in custody by Tanzanian police. Dar es Salaam Special Police Zone Commander Jumanne Muliro said the activists should have reported any abuse through official channels.
Huo ni maoni yao, ni mtizamo wao. Kama wanachokisema ni hivyo, basi wa officiate kwenye mamlaka ya kuchunguza. Wangetekwa, yani mimi naiona ni kama ni mtizamo, ni maoni. Wangekuwepo mimi ningehojiana nao. Nilitamani kama angekuwa ni yeye ndio anaongea na mimi ili nimuulize vitu vingi ili niwe kwa nafasi nzuri ya kujua anaongea kitu gani.
This comes 2 days after PLP leader Martha Karua called on the international community to launch investigations into what she described as cross-border abductions in East African community member states following the activist's release. Karua called on the African Union through the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and the UN Human Rights Council to establish a commission of inquiry into human rights abuses in Tanzania, Uganda and Kenya. That's the News Wire. I'm Edwin Lisamira.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
In this country, 6 families and 8,000 Kenyans control 90% of the GDP. We are not a country. We are a plantation. We work for Ruto.
When you're telling the judges court orders are papers or they will not obey court orders, they're sitting and you're seeking orders from them. So how are they supposed to interpret it? Isn't it an oxymoron?
When you see a judiciary that seems to be under some control somewhere, you start questioning. We have very powerful governors, but they don't use their offices to serve the people.
If you are not shameful to do what you are doing, why should we protect you?
I'm human. Everybody's human. So when you're told, kuja tuongee, I mean, you'd be a fool to say, stagi kuongea. Conversations have to be had, you know?
People in leadership should only go into leadership if they are ready and willing to change the lot of the people.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning, and I love your show.
Thank you.
Having come from a Kikuyu radio background, I migrated to Spice because of the content.
I was born in a slum, but somehow I got a break in life. So sometimes when you see the sweating coming out because of the passion and whatever it is, behind the noise, there are people, and we share the same umbilical cord.
It shouldn't be like that. I am so disappointed. We used to tell Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga that he's doing politics of conmanship, and even President Uhuru Kenyatta, serikali hii ndio iko na conmanship ya hali ya juu. You cannot promise people that you reduce tax, then you double.
In politics, there is the issue of trust. For you to turn around and then stab the same people who gave you that trust, there is no other level of dishonesty. Imabo, utaona dunia tu.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
We're coming in at 9 minutes after 7 o'clock. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Ndu, Dennis with you today. And as we go into a number of conversations this morning, we're getting into it. Our audience on KTN, Karibu Sana. And as we continue on our live streams on Facebook, on YouTube, and on X, getting into one where we say, you know what? There is a way for us to be involved in terms of what happens in the nation. Keeping quiet is not a way of doing things anymore. It's got to change. The voice of Wanjiku, one voice, millions heard. And in the hot seat this morning is Cornelius Chepsoy. He's a businessman and he's here. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Very well. How are you doing?
Very good, very good.
Karibu Sana.
Finally, I make it to this table. Eh?
The hot seat, indeed.
Yes, and I hope he doesn't have the proverbs today.
He does. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it turned out to be a good thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Let's see what the proverb is.
We'll tell everybody who you are in a minute, but first of all, let's welcome you properly with that proverb. He'll tell you where we are. Dennis will tell you which country we're in, and then we'd like to hear interpretation. All right.
So today we are in South Africa. South Africa, the country, but within South Africa, the country, there's another country called Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. What do you know about Swaziland?
Apart from the dance.
So they also have lions, rhinos, and elephants. So our proverb today, the antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit. The antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit. What do you make of that?
Oh, you made sure you took the hardest of proverbs, eh?
Easy.
So I'm wondering, if the antelope didn't move, it wouldn't fall in a pit. Yeah, this is quite a tough one. Why would you choose?
You can never be wrong by the...
Why would you choose... I would imagine the antelope that constantly moves will fall in a pit. First of all, if it didn't move, it would not fall. So,
yes.
Then it moved and it fell. End of the day, anyway, we all are moving and we all are trying to be careful of what we do. But somehow we'll make that mistake, we'll fall in that pit. So I would imagine, yes, we make mistakes as we go along the way. I do not know what these Swazi guys were thinking.
That's it. That's
fine.
As you move, you will make mistakes. Yeah.
That's good.
All right. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So you appeared on all our social media threads over the last couple of days, and people have been saying we will not take this kind of thing lying down, we will not, etc. You've also let us know that this particular video that you were in was actually a year old. It was last year, maybe some months old.
Around November.
So, okay, maybe about 6 months. It was 6 months ago or so that this happened. But that notwithstanding, what you did essentially through, and we're going to play that video in just a little bit for folks to hear what it is that we're talking about, but essentially putting people to task and say, well, this kind of nonsense that we've been dealt in the past, we're not going to allow that to continue to happen. And so here are individuals, here are people who are captains and players in industry, have a right to know what is going on, and you can no longer hide from them. So we're just going to play that clip so that we can get some foundation in terms of what exactly happened. Lydiah?
Same thing. The government has become a business mortician. You should have checked the government statistics before you came here. Taxes are going down because of this kind of talk. I'm sorry, but I want you to go and get as annoyed as I am. These people have invested in their machines. If you ask God, I'm here, sitting. He's been in this industry longer than me. He has a lot of rigs. He has invested more than 100 or 200 million. You can't just walk in here and refuse to listen to this gentleman when he tells you that government, has made bonds very expensive. Those illegal bonds, when I see you're talking about, you're very responsible. Because it takes so long for your permit to come out. In fact, I've always asked this one question. Once I make an application and pay government fee, and somebody has come to inspect, what do you call that thing? They call it what? Site verification. You still have to wait for Orma to send this thing from Nairobi to Machakos to NHIF. Then it takes the same route. For you to give me the same route. What are you talking about? Let's be serious. We will end this nonsense. When I see you, listen to me. Even when you did the regulation, I was with the chairman.
So, Chepsoy, you were quite upset, but you seem to have been speaking for some truth here. So, tell us what exactly the issue was, because what it is right now is that it is a representation of what many other people are going through in the country. And you said something that was very interesting. You said, Atuta danganyanga na tena, it is enough. We can't be going through this and over again. What's lay the base for us?
Thank you very much. First, thank you for inviting me here today. Finally made it here, I said, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to speak about the things that affect us, especially as business people. Now, we as a country, we have to come to that place where we ask ourselves, who does what? When government, for example, makes taxation, taxes as for activities that we do, I don't wake up in the morning knowing I'm going to work so I can pay taxes to government. And I think this is a narrative that has been quite pushed to a point that we have lost the meaning of business. People wake up in the morning to do business so they can feed their own families. And along the way, the taxman takes his share of your work or your income, for that matter. In the process, we lose that idea that the person who goes out to look out for that business ought to remain with a bigger portion of his income, for the very reason that he invested his mind, he invested his hard labor, his capital, and all that for the benefit of himself and his family. Now, sometimes government forgets that aspect and begins to put in regulations without thinking about what the implication is on the businessman. Taxes have been going up for very long. If you look at, if you were to take a couple of years, you will notice that taxation is generally on the upward trend. In fact, it's a big debate with the new finance bill. Back to the context of this, we were having a dinner actually with one of our biggest suppliers, and I don't know whether I should mention, but anyway, the thing is, it was one of the suppliers of in the water industry. They sell meters, they sell pumps, and all that stuff. And they invited us for a dinner, and everybody was there. The rig owners, the what some guys we call that is pumping fellows, hydrogeologists, all these people who had come for the dinner as well. Invited to the dinner was also the regulator, and it was represented by the CEO of Water Resource Authority. and he had made his presentation. I was actually late, and I came in when he was making the presentation. I'd come from a site, and part of what he was talking about was the upcoming regulations, which are now out. And in those regulations, some of the things were going up. The cost of applying for something called authorization to drill. We anticipated some penalties for maybe balls that have been drilled without going through the process of authorization and permitting. And anyway, there's quite a lot of things that he was saying. It was in relation to the upcoming regulations. So in that at that point, one of the drillers asked a question and to the CEO, and he said he thought that the new rates were too expensive for the customers. And I remember the CEO actually mentioned something they do, what they call benchmarking.
Okay.
And one of the places they had benchmarked was in Copenhagen. And I thought to myself, what is the relationship between Copenhagen and Kenya?
Not Copenhagen in Turkana, but the one in Denmark.
In Denmark,
Okay.
yeah. So at that point, I thought, look, we are dealing with two different environments, completely. My view is, if you go back in history, countries like Japan, China, and others have developed by looking at themselves more than others. Because, some of these countries like China today, they have developed by copying a lot of technologies from countries like the US. I'm not saying that, we go stealing ideas, but you've got to think about your local circumstance. Kenya, for example, is a water deficient country. And by water deficient, I mean, you don't, you have a country that doesn't have enough water. 80% of Kenya is arid. Let's start there. Once you cross Kitui, you go to parts of Machakos, you go to Garissa, you go to Marsabit, you go to Turkana. These are places where you have to spend quite a lot of your time finding the resource water. Then you come to places like Nairobi and the Western Kenya, where there's a lot of rainfall, but we don't have the infrastructure to harness this water. So when you talk about deficiency, you're not only speaking about the scarcity of the resource itself, which applies to places like Turkana, the arid areas. You're also talking about scarcity of infrastructure to harness this water. Remember, the Constitution has said that government, every person has a right to adequate water. Another adequacy also is followed by something else, potability. That water has to be clean for use, and it's in our Constitution. So now, WRA is the organization mandated to regulate the use of this resource, the resource itself.
Yeah.
There's another organization, of course, WASREP, which regulates the service. Yeah. But in our case, it's WRA that regulates the resource, because, quote, we are the service provider to the individuals who drill their own boreholes. Yeah. So I was actually alluding to the fact that WRA may be missing the point by not listening to us more than they were listening to Copenhagen. And I was saying, let's do better public participation with the locals, the people who practice on a daily basis. Let's hear them out. Let's hear, what is these regulations? How do they want to be governed? Of course, we're not saying that we want to set the rules, because this resource is not only for the businessman. It is also for the person who's enjoying the resource.
Yeah.
So we were discussing that aspect. So it's also important to put that context so that people understand.
To understand.
Yeah, where we were coming from.
Yeah.
That we were discussing upcoming regulations for the industry.
So if we take this and we broaden it.
Yes.
So yesterday we had a conversation around, of course, the finance bill and budget and all of this.
Yes.
And Bill Okoh, who was here with us, said something. And he said, you know what, this public participation, which you've mentioned just now, this public participation is actually a tool that government doesn't realize how effective it can be to be able to help you do things and do things right. So you mentioned that you were in a place where captains and players in this particular industry were there. They were all there. The people who practice this thing on a daily basis. The people who would then be able to give you the best insights into what you would do. And that if we actually took public participation seriously and then actually have people who are, this is their everyday touch to hand a business, that if you heard from them as government, it would make your job so much easier. And they're here, they're doing the thing. As opposed to going outside to benchmark, you can actually benchmark right in your own country, because there are people who have made it their trade. They have perfected it. They know what to do. So that comes to mind, especially when you go towards the Copenhagen idea initiative for benchmarking. Why do you think that these departments, you talked about WRA, you talk about WASREP, why do you think that they don't take best practice information from the people who are practicing it every day? Why?
So I think, to be fair, there's a challenge generally, and I think it stems from very many things. But I have almost asked myself, why is it that generally in Africa we wind up with complaining about our own governments the most? And I think this thing stems from the idea that the African mind pays more homage to leadership, or for the lack of a better word in the Kenyan context, more often than not the politics than the real gist of the matter. So when you look at the reasons why, for example, we don't listen to business people, is I think business people or other practitioners, as you say, is I think we don't have as a country an aspiration goal, long-term goal, long-range thinking, so that every regime that comes is experienced only to its own desires. So public participation would therefore have given us the opportunity to get very good insights on what goes on in an industry if, for example, we didn't have too many changes in policies and desires that satisfy single regimes. Remember, government officers survive regimes. So you find somebody maybe who has worked in WRA or any other institution for that matter for much longer than a CEO who comes in for 3 years, has his term renewed for another 3 years and goes. So my biggest issue is not even with particular institutions. I think it stems from our habit as a people, where we tend to switch our mind to reflect the desires of particular regimes that come and go. So you go to a country like China, and I've had clients who, we chat about these things. It almost doesn't matter who's president. They have a long trajectory. So everybody in their mind knows where the goal is. 50-year plans, 100-year plans. Yeah? In Kenya, we have 5-year plans. So you almost want to turn government to suit your 5-year game plan. So these government officers also, switch because you have to survive your job. You have to stay in line of the regime that comes. Yeah. So public participation then begins to fall on the aspect that, we are not creating laws that, are moving towards a certain goal in the future. So much so that if governments, as you say, understood the power of the people, they would actually make you shine. Like what I was telling the CEO, if we sit with us, you don't have to spend a lot of effort, money, resource, traveling. We'll tell you exactly where the inches are. For example, in a water deficient country like the one we have, what is the first goal that you should be doing? If you read the Constitution, for example, you will realize that the Water Act, the government is required to legislate and to progressively legislate in a manner that they are able to begin to give society that adequate water. So Kenya, we tend to just write laws and forget what the intent was. So when we go to public participation, we don't go back to a policy statement in mind that is long range in nature, so that we are looking at where have we arrived, what is this legislation impeding, how can we correct that. My view is that as a nation, we first need to come to a point where we agree on what we want to achieve as a nation, collectively, first of all. Once we have that in mind, then any office bearer begins to look at that eventual goal. Because when you have something that you're working so hard towards, then you ensure that the people come with you. In fact, regimes would win elections if they only listen to people. It would be very easy. If you actually go to people and say, hey, you're a driller, for like myself, how do we protect this resource? How do we make sure that the customer receives this water in time and at a cost that is affordable? Because government is not going to provide you water. It is never going to be able to provide. In our lifetime, it doesn't matter. They don't have the money. I mean, you remember in the recent past, the president has been saying we need to build 100 dams. It is true. We need all those 100 dams. But who is going to do it? It's the business people. I mean, government doesn't have the money to put up 100 dams.
Well, they may have the money. It's just that maybe it is not the priority right now to put up 100 dams.
If this government had the money, then we would all feel in our pockets, because as we speak, more than 50% of all the resources that we have in Kenya is going to debt repayment. So where else can you look to achieve government goal? It's the business people. It's giving them legislations and room to do business. That's why the drillers are here. The government can't give you water. The driller like myself invests in a rig. I come to your farm, I make a borehole, you have your water. You've provided yourself water, yes, but it was enabled by good legislation that allowed you to utilize the resource. So I'm saying, yes, government can continue to borrow, to provide water and all these other things. But the other easy way is to allow that gap to be breached by business people like ourselves.
Cornelius, I hear you speak in terms of water is a resource that is not there.
Yeah.
But that notwithstanding as well, infrastructure is not there anywhere as well. But that people like you who've gotten into this sector to ensure that Kenyans get this resource that is enshrined in the Constitution, they ought to have it. But there is fear that those in authority to regulate and ensure that that things happen as they should do not listen, right? And with this now, with the policy changes that you say are out right now, we see a situation where the prices would go up for the regular Kenyan, because if prices go to you, you transfer that to the mwananchi, right? But then again, we still go back to the matter to do with public participation. Before even the policy was being put in place, was there any communication with you before the draft came out?
Yes. So if you listen to that clip, we were aware that public participation was happening. But at the time the public participation was happening, the nearest we were it could also be that we may have gotten that communication or heard about the public participation when other sessions had happened. But at the time, the only other place we could go was in Machakos. And as she rightly put, government is also clever in how they do public participation, because they invest a lot of time in writing the laws, and many people don't want to have to go back to say we have to make amendments, and these things are also quite lengthy. So many people don't want to have to go back to the drawing board to rewrite the laws that they feel comfortable. And remember, I have to say this, and they say when somebody says I'm sorry, they are about to say something. But I'm sorry that sometimes government officers will sit, and write the law that makes their job easier. So if I tell you, take care of this building, this standard building, you're likely to ask for a brigade that helps you achieve your goal, without really thinking about the implication in terms of cost. So government officers sometimes may sit and forget that in doing very, like what I was saying, if you tighten the laws too much, then you lose the goal. You can take care of this building so hard that nobody comes in. There's always a joke of telling your watchman, don't let anybody, when you leave your house and you tell him, don't let anybody in, and your wife shows up and you didn't tell your watchman, please remember there are people who ought to access by virtue of the fact that they are related to you or anything like that. So if that guy doesn't ask the question, so this is a wife, should I let her in? I was told to do not let anybody in. Yeah? So, you see, we must make laws that are fair to both sides. Right? When you're regulating, you make sure that it does not injure the person that you're trying to protect, for example. So, in our case, for example, we are saying, don't tighten this rule so hard that even the customer, the very person who is not accessing water from the county government or from national government is unable to receive water. That was the gist of this matter, saying, please listen to us, the practitioners. We can tell you how to comply. And in that video, you hear me telling the CEO, make compliance easy. One of the biggest challenges I find with many regulations is they forget the aspect of compliance. Yes, the resource is not mine, so it must be regulated. You have to ensure that there's equity, there's sustainability in that resource. But in doing so, also make sure that I am able to, if there's a fee to pay for it, for you to be able to assess whether I deserve to use a resource, make it easy for me to pay you. Yeah? Don't tell me to go and pay cash, yeah? If I could have as well paid it by digital means. Yeah? Don't tell me, you have to put a specific kind of meter if, a simple one would do. I understand where WRA is coming in on this issue of automated meters, for example, is because that cost is actually so low that if they were to come to your house to read the meter, it defeats the whole purpose of metering the water, because it used to be 50 cents, I think, or thereabout, for every 1,000 liter. And yet they still have to collect that 50 cents from you. So we were having that discussion and saying, there are other means. I could do self meter reading. Yeah? I can read that meter myself and send you. Then on one day when your staff member is going to do a site visit or site verification, they may as well pass by the bowl and just confirm without necessarily driving to just come and read that particular meter. So there are many ways. We need to look at these aspects of governance in a manner that benefits the end user, not just the government. You see, we don't exist to serve government. Everybody must always remember, this government exists to serve us. It exists to make sure your interests and my interests are taken care of, and that if we disagree, they can arbitrate in a manner that works for all of us.
Cornelius, it's interesting. You say the government exists to serve us.
Yes.
I go back to the conversation of benchmarking, and we love this word. And in government, benchmarking is one of those very people look forward to benchmarking. So in this case, the benchmarking was done in Copenhagen. Okay, so when this presentation was going on, how does this benchmarking outside, because you're saying the government exists to serve us. So if I'm serving you, I need to have a conversation with you and understand your business and what you're doing, what are your challenges, and how we can smoothen things out. Yes. So when this conversation now moves out of having a conversation with you whom I'm serving to benchmark with somebody in another space, in another part of the world, what was this connection, benchmarking in Copenhagen, to what you guys were doing in that meeting?
Yeah, so, okay, I'm sure, of course, they benchmarked with many other places, but, of course, the one that came at that point was the issue of Copenhagen. Of course, there are very many reasons why government people benchmark many things, including regulations. So obviously, I'm imagining that in this aspect, in this particular incidents, they were looking for people who may have written this kind of laws for quite a long time. It was a context for me that was the issue. We are seated there, and we are talking about a law that is benchmarked with a developed country, a country that is able to provide water to the entire population that it has. In fact, in many of these European countries, your tap water, you don't pay metered. They assume that you're going to use water, reasonably. So some of these countries just put the water for you, and they have a flat rate for the water that you consume in your house, because it's assumed it is a right to everybody, and it should be availed to all of you. And it's also assumed that you'll be reasonable enough to use that water, in a good way. So I was saying, we are coming from a different aspect of society. We are starting off from a place of scarcity. We are starting off from a place of deficiency. And our situation, therefore, is different from Copenhagen. Copenhagen, they have a very developed infrastructure. They have a very developed society. They have different values from ours. We are discussing, Copenhagen is a city, and we are discussing laws also that affect a farmer. That's the case of Turkana, for example. By the way, the reason why I was mentioning Turkana in this case is I have had a situation, and I'm sure many other drillers have been in this situation, where you've been paid by a donor to go and drill a borehole, and it turns out dry. That person has been waiting for the water. They don't care who footed the bill for you to come there. They will tell you, there's so much land here in Turkana, you can move wherever you want, but you are only going to leave this place when we have the resource. So I had to go back to a donor and said, listen, these guys are not smiling with me because I didn't get water. And they're armed. They're saying, no, you live here when you provide us water. You have to, at that time, the issue of payment does not arise with the man on the ground. So you have to call your donor and say, my rig is now umetegwa nyara. So lucky for me, I had a donor who actually paid for us to drill another borehole. We were successful. We left when we had provided water. So my biggest problem with these issues is that we need to pay attention to ourselves and what works for us. What is it? Why is it that we set a lot of these laws based on other people when we can develop these things? Otherwise, what's the point of education? Why do we go to school? Why do we invest time and years of trying to join professions? Yeah. You have engineers, even among us, we have engineers. We have people like myself trained in business management. We have, drilling is not, it's an investment. We are not like lawyers who then have to have studied law. We are, in fact, among ourselves, we have lawyers who own rigs. So if you came to an association like ours, because we have an umbrella body called the Rig Owners Association, you would actually find a lot of these people who can help you redraft these laws in a manner that is beneficial to society. Of course, I have to mention, after this dinner, we have had several other forums with Warma. We are actually working together right now. We've made quite some progress in trying to even ease. Even though it is in letter, we're trying to say, okay, look, for example, you're saying the permit has to come out in within 60 days. Why does it have to take 60 days? Yes, it is in the law. But what is it that is making you wait for 60 days? Can we look?
Can we do it sooner?
Yes, can we do it sooner? Yeah, and there are things like I'll say this. Two days ago, I was actually with the same CEO. We had a meeting, and last week we also, as an association, we had been to his office. I'd gone there to complain about my own issue. And in the process, we actually had a very nice, decent meeting with the CEO and his chair. And I was saying, look, there's an easier way to do this. And I was able to, to put that point across. And the CEO said, yes, actually it is possible in that case to give you this authorization to drill within a short time. He has promised me 10 days. I am waiting to see the 10 days.
So there's a conversation. Yesterday we had a conversation with Bill Okoh, and what he was talking about is sometimes coming up with this, some of these laws or ways of even raising taxes. In that example, it almost feels like government is detached from business people or business owners, where if they're coming up with things that will affect business, they sit down somewhere, draft things, and then they come tell you, no, this is how we're going to work. Do you feel as a business person in this context that running a business in this country almost feels like you're so detached, no one cares? It's almost like it's a punishment to have a business where somebody sits somewhere, comes up with regulations, because in the clip you are saying tuache kudanganyana, end this nonsense. Are you feeling as a business person in this country that we're at that point where your voices are not heard, yet there's an expectation to pay taxes, to do all these things and follow through the regulation?
Yeah, to be quite honest. In fact, that clip I start by saying government has become a business mortician.
Yes.
It is barring businesses. And I wanted this to be heard because every time you set a law that affects a business, you have to ask yourself, what will happen to revenue? See, you must set a law. If I'm seated in government, I have to ask myself, what is the implication of this law to revenue and to goals that you want to achieve? You see, government has two major things when they set laws. Number one is, do you have a policy that you want to achieve? For example, in our situation, by setting this law, do you set it in a manner that it makes it easier for people to access water? Are you making the law to ensure that access to water is improved?
Right.
Or are you making the law to increase revenue? Because government has to balance between those two things. It has to raise revenue so that it can give you service. But also, it must meet the expectations of its citizens. We vote in governments based on manifestos.
Sure.
Manifestos that tell us what they will do for us. So yes, I feel that sometimes government is forgetting that if you do not protect the businessman, you will wind up with a situation where you do not have enough taxes to provide the very service for which we elected you.
Cornelius, we talk about public participation and how critical it is. There is a feeling that public participation is just another card that is there because it's in the Constitution. We'll do it anyway, not necessarily because we want to see proper services. But I want to flip the question and ask, if proper public participation happened, like say you had a meeting with rig owners like yourself with regard to this policy, we need to change like this in order to provide this service like this, and let's extrapolate it and just look at it as a government that listens to the people and hears what it is they say. What kind of relationship would you see between the people and the government that serves them?
You know, if the voices of the citizens, and in this case Kenyans, was heard, you know, any regime that comes to power, whether it's this one or the one that's coming, would actually have a very easy time. Because like I said, we don't exist to serve government. We want a government that serves us. In fact, the only reason we have government is because you have a different mind from mine. And there's a point at which your mind is going to differ from mine. What you want and what I want will differ. For example, like I just told you, in this issue of the water, there's a conflict between what is fair for this generation and what is fair for the next generation. How much of what we have now do we abstract? Because, you know, water is also a finite resource. And if, for example, you drill a borehole 200 meters from me, you have already put in your money. And I drill a borehole 200 meters from you, you know what's going to happen is we're going to share the same resource.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah? I could be doing agriculture. I may be planting vegetables, and you're only using it, you know, for your household purposes. Now, I'll be abstracting more water than you are. Now, if we differ, because if your bowl goes dry, I'd be arguing, I need this water because I have to irrigate my vegetables. But you need the water because you're using it to cook and to, you know, do other things within your house. That's where government comes in to protect the resource. And that's the purpose of ensuring that public participation happens so that you listen to both sides of the coin and then go ahead to create a law that then works for these people. Now, if governments were to take these things seriously, believe me, we'd have a very beautiful society. Because then the laws that are in place were created by us. Remember, when you go to public participation, what do? You actually sign in a book. In fact, more public participations now that are real and genuine, they take a picture of you. They make sure that you don't come back to say I was not present or I was not represented. So the thing is, we must stop making public participation, you know, just one of those things that you're ticking boxes. And it goes back to what I said originally. It is a mindset thing. It is, what do we want to achieve as a country? What is the purpose of, you know, setting these laws? What does it achieve? What will this law do to us? You know, we must take stock of what the law has done for us So that we're not just feeling. In fact, I have this view that we have so many laws in this country that we have forgotten the earlier ones. In fact, you have one law based on another one, and you don't even know what the one that you base this law on is saying. If you walk in the streets of Nairobi today, even myself, if you ask me, I don't have enough. I don't know much of my own constitution. In fact, I was when I was there yesterday, I was saying, we need to create popular versions of all these laws. You must have seen people go to court to argue and to talk about conflicting laws. You have said this in this law, and you have said this is in the other law. Because we have a tendency to just pass laws. And pass this law, pass that law, pass this law, pass that law.
Yes, I'm curious because 80% of this country, like you say, doesn't clearly have access to water, can't get water.
Yeah.
For someone who wants to drill a borehole, let's talk numbers and let's talk about the clearance that you will need for you to come dig a borehole and the end consumer.
Yeah.
What processes do you go through, permits, licenses, and what does it cost you, and what does it then cost me who wants to have access to the water?
Yeah.
Break it down for us.
That's very good, actually. So it is good that you asked that question because after this meeting that we had, we have been grappling with these issues as drillers. We're actually being run out of business. In fact, let me just be clear, we're not even being run out of business by WRA. In fact, even WRA itself is worried that an industry is dying. Yeah? And it's dying on account of people that wake up one morning and decide we must raise revenue here. And I'm speaking about counties. So let me first break down for you what it takes to drill a borehole of your own. Forget commercial boreholes. You would have to do something called an hydrogeological survey. And it's important for you, and it's also important for governments. That hydrogeological survey will cost you anything between, for a good geologist, anything between 40 and 50,000. Some go as high as 80, but take an average of 50,000 for the hydrogeological survey. You finish that. Then you come to the permitting part, which is called authorization to drill. You start with the first permit, which is an authority to drill. It's given to you by Water Resource Authority, which manages this resource. That will cost you 25,000. Okay? That's around 25,000 to do that. Once you receive the authorization, and this is where we were having problems with drillers, and we're making progress with WRA on that matter, the delay on the issue of time, because it used to take us up to 3 months to get this document. But in law, they say 60 days. So once you get this document, now we go to the next aspect. There's something called environmental impact assessment. It will cost you something like 40,000 or 50,000 for the person who writes for you the report. Then you file that report with government.
Oh, the report is paid for, essentially.
Of course, you pay.
And this is based on findings on the ground.
Yes, so this expert goes to the ground, to ask the neighbors whether they are okay with a borehole. And then, of course, they also check what impact it will have on the environment and stuff like that. That person will charge you 40,000. Then you pay government fee, 10,000 shillings. Right, I'm sure you realize we are past the 100,000 mark already.
Yeah, we're at 115,000.
Then hell breaks loose from there. Hell breaks loose because you still have to get a letter of no objection from the water company. So in the case of Nairobi, you have to get a letter of no objection from Nairobi Water.
Okay,
because
this is in every county.
Yes, they are saying this is our jurisdiction. You see, there's another regulator called WASREP, which regulates the service provision end of things. So Nairobi Water falls within the armpits of WASREP. They have been allocated an area in which to operate within the Nairobi area. Right? Those borders sometimes do not follow the political boundaries, by the way. You need to know. Because there's something you need to understand. The way this water resource is managed, it is based on the flow of water. Mostly indicated by the flow of rivers. So sometimes they would overlap within counties. Now you get that letter of no objection from these water companies. And if we're being honest, we're living in Kenya. That letter can take you months So most people have to find someone who knows somebody inside to help you
for the letter to come out.
Yes, for the letter to come out.
Sorry, I just want to clarify
it's
something.
free, yes, but
I want to clarify something. This 115,000 that we've paid so far, because we did the 40,000, then you do another 25, another 40, another 10,000. We're at 115,000, and your rig has not touched ground.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't moved. It's still in my yard.
Okay.
Yeah, or somewhere in another site waiting for this one.
Now we're waiting for a letter.
Yes, we're waiting for
the coming from where?
From the water company, like Nairobi Water, Eldoret Water, and others.
This is at the county level.
Yes, at the county level.
Okay.
Then the counties now have gone wild. They have raised their own. They raise their own invoices. Now, I have to be very honest on this table. You go to a county which is water deficient, like Taita Taveta, they want 200,000.
For what?
For you to drill the borehole in their county.
Just to say come and do.
No, he's not inviting me. I'm being invited by an individual.
Yeah.
But for me to go and drill the borehole on that individual's farm, I pay 200,000.
That's a fee under what?
So counties will name it whatever they want. Some call it drilling permits. They don't even have a name. You know, they've put these laws in their finance acts as ways of raising funds. Because remember, by law, it is Water Resource Authority that is mandated to protect this resource. They have no role. They have no role, absolutely no role. This, I speak for WRA. Even them, they are struggling. They have issued notices to counties telling them it is not within your armpit to charge fees on this aspect of water. In fact, when you read the Water Act, it states clearly that this resource, the Water Act itself,
it's a national
is
resource.
very clear that it is a national resource. And the reason is obvious. This water is not static. It doesn't, there's no water that is static in Nairobi County, for example.
It's our water.
Yes. And it's moving.
Yeah.
From whether it's on the surface or it's underground, water is always moving. So, for example, if you look at the way they have demarcated the Nairobi region office, this, I think they call it the earthy suit. It will cut across Nairobi County, Kiambu, Kajiado, Machakos. Because that water underneath is in constant motion.
But the county will still ask for this 200,000.
The county will still ask me to pay them for that resource that is not theirs.
Is this 200,000 like standard across all counties?
That is the next problem. It is not standard. So in Taita Taveta it's 200,000. In Kajiado it's 50,000. It's 20,000 for the customer, 30,000 for the driller, and these laws keep changing. 2 years ago it was 30,000 per annum for the driller and 20,000 per borehole for the client. Now it's 30,000 for the driller per borehole and 20,000 for
every customer.
For every customer.
So let's stick with this 200,000 on top of the other figures.
Yes, before you go, and then I'll let you. This is how even it gets more ridiculous. In Machakos and Turkana County, very dry counties, you pay to enter their county.
Sorry?
For your rig.
Your rig, and that, what do you call those?
That boundary, the Kanjo boundary,
The Kanjo, the cess point, you pay cess.
Okay.
For your rig to enter. It's even ridiculous. Okay, I can almost live with the one for Turkana, except for the fact that it's the driest county. It is the last county. It's the last frontier. So they know that you're not going anywhere beyond that. Machakos, for the love of God, I could be going to Kitui.
Yes,
but they were charging me.
How much do you pay for that?
I think for Machakos it's 6,000 shillings.
6,000.
Yes, so remember, drillers have 2 to 3 trucks. You pay for all of them.
For each, so it comes to 24,000.
Yes.
So 6,000 times 3.
Oh, times 3, okay.
Yes.
So 18,000.
Yes. Now.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
And remember, you're still going to pay for drilling.
Yeah.
Another 20,000.
Wait, you're the driller.
Yes.
You pay 20,000 for what again?
For drilling.
For drilling.
You have to pay the county.
So everything
but what
else.
Is this 200,000?
This is what I'm telling you. We are lost, and that's why we've come out, guns blazing. Because what is this that you're charging me? The resource is not yours.
Sorry,
it's not a business permit. I don't operate in your county.
I think we need to be very clear.
Yeah.
Because we're saying here that County Ndu, in order for Cornelius to come and drill a borehole, I don't care whether you'll find water. I don't care whether you will find superfluous amounts of water. The fact that you've brought your rig in and you're going to start drilling, you will pay me as County Ndu 200,000 shillings. This is different from the 20,000 shillings that whomever is going to charge you to actually start to do the thing.
Yes.
It's different from the 18,000 shillings that will charge you to come from wherever you're coming from to cross over into my county. And this is different from the 115,000 that we've charged you before to get a letter and all of this allotment, etc., etc.
In fact, Nairobi,
we are now at 336,000 shillings and we've not found water yet.
You haven't seen the rig. Okay, maybe after you pay the 200, now the rig arrives. You have not started paying me, the driller.
To start
drilling.
Where?
So you are 300,000. I mean, what did you get that figure?
336,000.
You are 336,000 down.
So now you've crossed the county.
Yes,
you get to my piece of land.
I've gotten to your piece of land.
Can you now start drilling?
Now, if we're talking about Taita Taveta, maybe most drillers may do about 7,000-8,000 shillings or 10,000 shillings per meter, depending on the difficulty of the site.
Let's just talk about Machakos here.
Yeah, so Machakos will charge about 7,000 shillings per meter from
7,000 per meter. What's the average depth you go to?
So call it 150.
150
meters. Oh, wait until I tell you Nairobi is approaching 400. Yeah.
400 what?
Meters.
Meters?
Yes.
To get water?
Yes.
What are you talking about?
I'm telling you. I told you I'm a practitioner.
How deep is the water table?
It is.
In Nairobi?
It is.
Wait. So 7,000 per meter. Let's back it up a bit. 7,000 per meter in Machakos.
Yeah.
So you have to go 150 meters.
Yes.
So that's how much?
1,050,000.
That's times 150.
Yes.
Which gives 1,050,000.
Yes.
So this is now
plus all the other costs.
Plus 336,000.
Okay. That's for around 200,000 more. You add to that figure.
So once you dig 150 meters, you have not set up anything.
No,
we have not put a pump. We have not powered it.
And you've not, because it's not just the earth. There's something that you put.
Yes, and then we have not stored
the casing.
We have not done
the casing.
Yes, no, that's inclusive of casing. But you haven't.
The plumbing.
That first of all. Wait, we go back to WRA at that point. We pay another 25,000
for what?
For something called a permit, abstraction permit.
Is that not involved in this other thing?
No, that 20 was authorization to drill. Now you have to pay to use the resource.
Another 20,000. 25.
And then you have to pay 2 shillings and 50 cents for every 1,000 liter of water.
Okay, you need to stop.
So basically, how much does it cost a regular Kenyan to drill borehole?
So from start to end, you're staring at on the minimum, call it 2 million shillings. That is if the borehole is short, easy to drill,
and the county has favorable rates.
And the county is favorable. Now we have more problems.
I know we don't see. Cornelius, unfortunately, time doesn't allow us to even go into these problems because we are at the point whereby that all of this is being charged and somebody then is trying to operate within business, number one, and that we're saying that it is not the person's fault that there's no water and they're trying to find some water, whether it's a business or whether it's a community, household, whatever the case may be. But that it just does seem as though you're being punished for being in an already difficult situation and trying to make the most of it very quickly because our time has come to an end. Do you think that this can this is clear that it is difficult to do, it's frustrating. Is there a way through if we start to relax a little bit to decrease the tension and a lot of these regulations and laws and permits in order for business to be done? Is it possible?
Yes, it is. And this is what we've been discussing with the WRA. Like I said, as a Rigon, as we were there just last week, to have this discussion and say, how do we ease? And by the way, this CEO that I was talking to, very fine gentleman. Very fine gentleman. We've had, I have even personally had, meetings of my own when I'm running into problems. Now, the issue is, first of all, we need, in my own personal opinion, these counties need to follow the law. First of all, they have no business charging for water. And second, and most important, they ought to follow the law, the fourth schedule. It does not give them power to charge for this resource. Now, second, if you are in Turkana, why would you punish somebody who's actually trying to do your job?
To do your job for you.
If you were doing it in the first place, I wouldn't exist.
There you go. Cornelius Chepsoy has joined us this morning, opening our eyes to the realities that most people are going through every single day in terms of trying to get business done and in terms of also just trying to survive. We have to open the lid on a lot of these things and we have to have these conversations. We want to thank you for joining us this morning. It's another one of those ones where we leave ourselves hanging because the question is what really ought to happen next. But it's good that we have the conversations. It's important for us to do. We want to thank you for being in the hot seat this morning.
Thank you.
The conversations definitely, folks, must continue. It's 2 minutes past 8.
Thank you very much.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
In this country, 6 families and 8,000 Kenyans control 90% of the GDP. We are not a country. We are a plantation. We work for Ruto.
When you're telling the judges court orders are papers or they will not obey court orders, they're sitting and you're seeking orders from them. So how are they supposed to interpret it? Isn't it an oxymoron?
When you see a judiciary that seems to be under some control somewhere, you start questioning. We have very powerful governors, but they don't use their offices to serve the people.
If you are not shameful to do what you are doing, why should we protect you?
I'm human. Everybody's human. So when you're told, kuja tuongee, I mean, you'd be a fool to say, "Sitaki kuongea today."
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Edwin Lisamira. An 18-member committee comprising 9 legislators from the National Assembly and 9 from the Senate has been appointed to build consensus over the ongoing dispute between the two houses regarding the division of Revenue Bill 2025. While the National Assembly has proposed 405 billion shillings, senators are demanding for 465 billion shillings. National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah has insisted that the Senate's demand for more funds to be disbursed to counties is unrealistic. But Ichung'wah's counterpart in the Senate, Aaron Cheriot, maintains that counties need the additional 60 billion shillings.
So the issue of resources not being sufficient is a constant that will always be there throughout the years. There will never be a time that we'll be told that we have sufficient resources to devolve to the counties. So that should never be a basis upon which we make the decision of how much to devolve to our counties. We should always be guided by the needs assessment, which is what the Senate has done in this particular situation. We have looked at the request from county governments, taking into consideration inflation, additional levies like the housing levy and share contributions.
The mediation committee members from the National Assembly are Samuel Atandi, Owen Baya, Robert Bukose, George Kariuki, Marianne Keitani, Christopher Seka, Leah Sankaire, Naisula Leisuda, and Zamzam Mohammed. Those representing the Senate are James Murango, David Wakoli, Esther Okenyuri, Joseph Githuku, Margaret Kamar, Catherine Muma, Moses Kajwang, Dan Manzo, and Christo Asige. Siaya Governor James Orengo is expected to lead a delegation to State House, Nairobi, after he met with Treasury CS John Mbadi in an apparent bid to ease tensions ahead of the meeting. Orengo has been critical of President William Ruto and the so-called broad-based government. He's been battling a backlash from some ODM members over his hardline stance against Raila Odinga's political partnership with Kenya Kwanza. Last month, Orengo wrote to the president seeking an audience to discuss what he described as a consultative development meeting with leaders from Siaya. In the letter, Orengo said the delegation will comprise cabinet secretaries and permanent secretaries from Siaya, all MPs, the speaker, members of the county assembly leadership, and his executive. The government has reaffirmed its commitment to transforming the macadamia industry into a major contributor to the country's economy. Deputy President Kithure Kindiki, who opened the inaugural National Macadamia Conference at Ndu University on Wednesday, said the industry has the potential to earn Kenya over 10 billion shillings annually. Kindiki challenged stakeholders to fully leverage the upcoming county aggregation and industrial parks, or KIPES, to scale up macadamia processing and market access. He maintained that the government will continue to disallow the export of raw macadamia in a bid to promote local value addition.
We are not going to allow the export from Kenya of in-shell macadamia and process. We will not allow. We catch you, we put you in jail. Let us value add, because once value addition takes place, the prices just multiply tenfold, the value, the return, and therefore we are not going to renege on this policy. We'll be very firm. Trust you me, we will enforce this policy.
President Donald Trump has signed a ban on travel to the U.S. from 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Haiti, and Iran. There are an additional 7 countries whose nationals face partial travel restrictions, including Cuba and Venezuela. When announcing the ban on social media platform Truth Social, Trump cited the Colorado attack on Sunday, in which multiple people were set on fire during an event calling for the release of Israeli hostages in Gaza.
I am signing a new executive order placing travel restrictions on countries including Yemen, Somalia, Haiti, Libya, and numerous others. The strength of the restrictions we're applying depends on the severity of the threat posed. The list is subject to revision based on whether material improvements are made, and likewise new countries can be added as threats emerge around the world. But we will not allow people to enter our country who wish to do us harm.
That's the news wire. I'm Edwin Lisamira.
All of us, his institutions are critical.
This is the
Good morning, and I love your show.
Thank you.
Having come from a Kikuyu radio background, I migrated to Spice because of the content.
I was born in a slum, but somehow I got a break in life. So sometimes when you see the sweating coming out because of the passion and whatever it is, behind the noise, there are people, and we share the same umbilical cord.
It shouldn't be like that. I am so disappointed. We used to tell Honorable Raila Odinga that he's doing politics of conmanship, and even President Uhuru Kenyatta, serikali hii ndio iko na conmanship ya hali ya juu. You cannot promise people that you reduce tax, then you double.
In politics, there is the issue of trust. For you to turn around and then stab the same people who gave you that trust, there is no other level of dishonesty. Imabo, utaona dunia tu.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
A very, very, very good morning at 10 minutes after 8 o'clock, and settling into things and into the third hour of the Situation Room this Thursday. And as we get into our conversation for this hour, our guest is seated, and he's had a very busy couple of days. He's just been, in and out of the corridors of justice. Some people would say it's injustice, but hey, okay. Degwanjiro is a constitutional lawyer, and he is here for our Justice Thursday conversation, one that we have around legal and judicial matters. And he's here this morning. Wakili, good morning.
Good morning, Ndu Okoh.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah.
We saw you at Milimani Law Courts the other day. You know, you were, and even before that, the week before. You have been one busy man.
We have been busy all over the country, trying to liberate this country and defend our fellow freedom fighters from intimidation, harassment, and the scheme of the regime to silence any dissident voice. So what we are doing is that we have offered ourselves for this cause.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to get into it because I think it's important to do. Of the last couple of days, we've been convicted more so than previously to have conversations that are uncomfortable, to have conversations that many would not want to have because, okay, so where are we going to go? And then to be comfortable enough to say that at the end of the conversation or at the place where the conversation transitions, it is okay for us to say we are not so sure what direction we are taking. But by the very fact that we are having the conversations means that we are vested and trying to make sure that a solution at some point is reached.
That's correct.
Or that we can continue to survive within the space that we are in.
That's correct.
So even as we do that, Dennis will tell you what country we are in this week. And we would like to hear your interpretation of today's proverb.
Yeah, so today we are in South Africa. This country is Eswatini. It is a monarchy. And one thing that stands out is the Inchwala ceremony. Now, this is a sacred kinship ritual held around December or January, where the country gets to celebrate and harvest and reaffirming the king's spiritual role. It's exclusive to Eswatini. You can't get it anywhere else.
Yes.
And our proverb today: the antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit.
Yes.
The antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit. What do you make of that?
I make it of one thing that it has several interpretations in my view. That an antelope that is constantly moving might be trying to run away from a prey. And therefore what it's focused on is saving its life, and therefore where it is stepping or jumping on matters not as more than saving its life. That can be one interpretation. The other interpretation could also be equated to the one that we say that a rolling stone gathers no moss, in the sense that it's likely to fall into a pit because it might be reckless because it's perhaps focusing on something else. And therefore to say that I would equate it to this current regime, that the regime has fallen into a serious pit because they are not able to sit down and recollect themselves, to reevaluate themselves, to plan. You know, that's why you're falling into a ditch or into a pit, because you're basically not engaging your faculties into what you are doing. And therefore, if the antelope itself is running helter-skelter, it will not have the opportunity of composing itself and looking at why it's limping too.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Well put.
Yeah.
That's it. So we were guests to this arena.
Yes.
On Tuesday.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's when the quote unquote party started.
Yes.
That we saw, and it's good that you're here because you can then guide us in terms of sub judice and all of this.
Yes.
We heard that she had been arrested.
Yes.
Rosenjerry. And the reasons as to why she was arrested is because of this website that she had created.
That's correct.
In terms of giving information about the finance bill and allowing members of the public who then read and resonated or did not resonate with the information that she had put out there, which, by the way, it's information that is in the public domain. It was just broken down for people to understand.
Yes.
She was arrested and then charged with contravention of the Cybercrime and, it's a very long thing, something Technology Act.
Yes.
Right? Contravention of the same.
That's correct.
Okay. After looking for her for 90 hours, just over 3 days, she was finally presented in court on Tuesday.
Yes.
With, I think, a historic number of lawyers for an individual in this case. And she declined to take plea, of course, on the advice of her lawyers.
Yes.
And then she was released on, was it 100,000 shillings?
Yes.
And then called back for mention on the 20th of June.
Yes.
Many legal minds have put their thoughts and opinions towards this and said, you know what? The judicial officer in that position actually should have just looked at this thing and said, this is a waste of time. It's a travesty of justice. Why don't we just let her go home and forget about all this thing and stop wasting the court's time and resources? Because it was frivolous at best. From a legal point of view, not taking any sides per se, what does this actually look like to you?
It's very unfortunate that the country finds itself in this situation where dissident voices must be silenced at all cost. What we took in that matter, and I must thank the lawyers who turned up in defense of this real girl, being led by His Excellency Dr. Kalonzo Musyoka, the Chief Justice Emeritus, David Maraga. We also had the Senator for Makueni, Senator Maanzo, and many others. There was also the President of LSK Emeritus, the Uri Eric. We also had Kibe Mungai and many others who also turned up. We also had the LSK represented by Council Mango. And all what we were doing is to make sure that we defend what we have already gained. And what we were defending is the freedom of expression. I take it that the country is in a situation whereby they do not want to hear any other dissident voice. They only want to hear the voices of praises. Because the reason why the real girl was charged is because she actually did what the Constitution required of her.
Okay.
That in this current era and this constitutional dispensation, the involvement of the people in legislative process is a fundamental principle in our constitutional democracy. In the sense that the backlog of our constitutional dispensation and democratic dispensation, the central aspect of it is the people. And that's why we begin by saying that power belongs to the people and that they shall exercise their sovereignty in accordance with the Constitution. So the Constitution has created the mechanism of exercising this sovereignty. Among them is a mechanism of public participation. And this mechanism of public participation was designed to make sure that the people have a say in the manner and in the mode and means in which they are governed. And that they do not just surrender their power holistically to an institution that at one particular time may become arbitrary and the people may not have the opportunity of checking on the arbitrariness of that particular institution. And that is why we created residual powers and reserved them for the people.
Okay.
That the people must be involved in the processes that the government of Kenya at that particular time is engaged in. So the website was created for enhancing and operationalizing that constitutional dictate of the participation of the people. So they created a website, they created emails, they published those emails, and of course the purpose of the publication of those emails to the public was to invite the members of the public to react.
To be in contact with them.
And to be in contact with them.
Okay.
And it was the only feedback mechanism that was offered by Parliament. So when Rose responded to the invitation in the manner in which she responded, because there was no directions as to how one ought to respond. They never created barriers or restrained individuals on how you should respond to the invitation. So she responded in that manner, and also facilitated other individuals who wanted to participate to have an interaction with the parliament. So the question therefore was, if she's responding to an invitation and there's a prima facie presumption that the person who has published this website, parliament, wants to have an interaction with the people of Kenya, how has she then committed an offense?
Okay.
And that's a fundamental issue, and that's why we refused and objected to her taking plea.
Because you can't say that you're guilty or not guilty on something for which there is no offense that has been
something
caused.
that the law requires you to do.
Okay.
Something that the Constitution requires you to do. You have responded in that manner. So you cannot then therefore say that she has created interference. But we must read this thing beyond the legal jargons. We must read this thing beyond the charge sheet and beyond the innocent girl. The innocent girl represents a bigger cross-sectional of the society that is discontented with what is happening in this country. Number two, she represents the group that was out in the streets on the 25th of June 2024. And remember, what took us to the street as at that time was the same reason that Rose was responding to. So in a manner to create fear, in a manner to create intimidation, in a manner to silence the voices of the individuals who may be discontented with the current finance bill, they had to arrest her so that any other person thinking that you can still oppose the finance bill, you can be retributed. So the reason for arresting her and keeping her in custody for 4 days when the Constitution provides a right to bail or bond was to ensure that the government breaks our bonds so that they silence any other dissident voice, to act as a deterrence mechanism and to inhibit any other person who may be having a view of that nature.
Ndegwa, we talk about dissident voices, but when Jerry was arrested on the basis that she published a website, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And in that website that she published, she never told you how to express yourself.
How to respond.
You could either say, I support the bill, or I don't. Pretty much public participation that the government needs to ensure that Kenyans are party to. If you remember, Finance Bill 2024, Kenyans pretty much said, we expressed ourselves on this finance bill. Yes. Refused to pick up our responses.
That's correct, yes.
But she's made it easier for the government, pretty much doing the government's job. When you talk about the emails that are there for public officers, these are .go.ke.
Yes.
Public property owned by Kenyans.
Yes.
How is it then an offense to send an email to a public official?
And you know, that's a question that I actually put to the court, whether there is actually an offense. Remember, the Constitution that we enacted had contemplated such kind of scenarios and occurrences. And Article 50, it is provided by the Constitution that no one shall be convicted of an offense if the offense was not defined in law as at the time of the alleged commission or omission.
You need to say that again.
Yes.
The Constitution and Article 50, Clause 2, Paragraph O, provides that no one shall be convicted of an offense if the offense was not defined or known in law at the time of the alleged occurrence, of omission, or commission.
Okay.
In Latin is a common law doctrine we call the doctrine of nullium crimen sine lege. You cannot be punished of an offense if the offense has not been defined by the law.
Okay, so that is the reason why then she was advised, or it was said that she was not going to take.
You cannot take plea because the offense that you're asking me to respond to does not exist in our law books.
So why is, and I need you to explain on this particular. Excuse me, Wakili. If we're saying that this particular offense, there was a charge sheet, right? And this particular offense is that there was contravention to this particular cybercrime act.
Yes.
And that what she did was that ask people to send, and we did see that there was sending of communication to these public emails that were provided.
Yes.
Are we saying that this charge or this particular offense is not provided for, is not described in, is not defined by law in any way, shape or form?
If you may allow me, just for purposes of aiding our listeners to understand what we are saying, I'll refer to that particular section that Rose was charged, this will not be sub judice because the law is law, and we have to read as it is written by Parliament. It says section 16 of the Cyber Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act. A person who intentionally and without authorization does any act which causes unauthorized interference to a computer system, program, or data commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 10 million or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years. So what are the ingredients of this offense? One, intentional and without authorization does any act which causes unauthorized interference. So the fundamental ingredient here is one, the intention. Number two, without authorization. But let's go now to subsection 2. It says, for purposes of this section, an interference is unauthorized if the person whose act causes the interference is not entitled to cause that interference. So that for you to understand whether this amount to interference, this is a test, is a person who is alleged to have caused that interference authorized or entitled to cause interference? The answer to that one is yes, because Njeri is a citizen of the Republic of Kenya.
Yes.
Njeri is protected under Article 1 on the sovereignty of the people. Njeri is protected under Article 10 on the public participation, values and principles of governance, the question of democracy, the question of participation of the people, equality before the law. Yes, Njeri is entitled because in Article 118, Parliament is supposed to involve the people of Kenya in legislative processes and any other act that Parliament engages in.
So Wakili, on that,
yes,
the charge sheet, the first count, they said under unauthorized interference with a computer system, contrary to Section 16 of the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, they say that, this according to the charge sheet, that Njeri created and deployed a web-based program that allowed now members of the public to send emails to the National Assembly. But the mass email in the charge sheet, they argue, it disrupted the normal functioning of the committee's systems. So the prosecution now is nailing her under unauthorized interference with the computer system because it ended up now jamming.
Remember, sorry, excuse me. Remember, that is a creation of the DPP. The law does not speak about the issue of jamming. The law speaks about interference.
Intention?
And interference, unauthorized interference. So the first test is, was she authorized to act in that manner? The answer is yes, but let me also read for you number 2, paragraph B. It amounts to interference if the person whose act causes the interference does not have consent to interfere from a person who is entitled. So there is also the question of consent. The fact that Parliament published this email, the fact that they invited the members of the public, and the fact that it is not the creation of Parliament to do it, but even the creation of the Constitution to allow people to publicly participate in the legislative processes, the Parliament has consented.
So is public participation in this case described? How do you participate? Can you send an email?
No, well, it is not, they have created various mechanisms and various platforms. One of the platforms is where they are telling us, send your memorandums to this email. Therefore, when I send the memorandum to email and it crashes your system because of the inefficiency of your system, you cannot therefore say that I have interfered. And that's the case that I put forth. I argued that case on that basis. I argued that case on the basis of Article 1, Article 10, and Article 118 of the Constitution.
Was there proof that the system jammed? Because in this count 1, where they say, as a result of what Njeri did, it led to mass email disrupting the normal functioning.
The question of proof, remember, proof can only come at the full hearing of the case, during the trial. That's when the prosecution will prove all their case. But now, because we never allowed it to go to that particular position, we do not know the evidence that the prosecution has in store for this case.
If that evidence is produced, will it change the case?
It cannot be produced on the basis of a charge that is not known in law, because the charge itself does not exist. The law does not require a person who has responded to a public invitation to be charged for conducting herself in a lawful manner as provided for by the law. And that's the difference about this case. And the unfortunate thing is that the regime is so intimidated by what is happening in the country that they are using this Cybercrime Act as a means of silencing us. Remember during the botched breakfast prayer in Safari Park, and they call it the botched because it was choreographed to that direction.
Okay.
You remember there was a priest who purportedly preached on a regime being apologetic. You remember somebody else came out to purport to apologize conditionally. Of course, that is Mr. Kasongo himself. Do I refer to him as Mr. Kasongo or Mr. William Ruto?
Oh, the president of the
Mr. William Ruto
Kenya
purported to let me refer to him by his name. Mr. William Ruto purported to give a conditional apology. But before that, there was a very unique prayer that was made by the member of parliament for Dagoretti South.
North.
Dagoretti North.
Yes.
Honorable Elachi. That, oh God, help us to deal with the social media. That the social media is purporting to design the manner in which government will be formed. So this is a larger scheme of trying to silence and to control what people are fed with. Remember, previously they would easily control the mainstream media houses. They had the mechanism of controlling them previously. But now, any person holding a smartphone is a full media house. You can broadcast, you can make news that will change the course of this country. And therefore, they have realized that if they do not censor us, they do not censor these media systems. Remember, the mainstream media has a media council, there is all this. But as people owning phones, there is no regulatory mechanisms. So any person becomes a journalist, any person becomes a photographer, any person becomes an editor of the news. That is what they are trying to silence. But all unto them, because they cannot fight with data. Data is more powerful than an individual. Yeah.
Okay, so when we look at these issues, because there seem to be so many of them happening at the same time.
Yes.
The same law seems to just be a little bit ambiguous in terms of what should be allowed to happen or not.
Yes.
But is it stemming from the fact that citizens want to practice their sovereignty as individuals and then come together in a collective or concerted sovereignty?
That's correct.
To then be able to share information.
Yes.
How far does it go, really? Because we usually say that my rights end where yours begin. Do the rights of the people end where the law comes into place? Do we have that kind of relationship?
Yes, we have.
For people to understand, Wakili, I think this is extremely important because there are folks who have something to share. There are folks who are able to take information, break it down and say, look, this is important because that is one of the roles of government, to be involved in civic education for its people, to be able to understand.
May I
in
say
the event that doesn't happen, there are individuals who are gifted and then would be able to break it down for people to understand.
May I say this?
Do the waters touch?
Government thrives in misinforming its citizens and making sure that their citizens are not aroused in terms of information. This is what is called the Napoleonic principle or ideology. Napoleon, when he captured France, he realized that the French people were so much civic and they were civilly awake. And of course, this stemmed from the French Revolution of 1776, when the French people overthrew the monarch, King Louis XVI. Why was King Louis XVI overthrown? He was overthrown because people were politically conscious, they were economically conscious, and they were socially conscious of their surroundings. So Napoleon realized this: if allow this wheel of political consciousness, civil consciousness, economic consciousness to continue rolling, the same thing that befell King Louis XVI will also befall me. That is when he became president, when he became the king, he changed the system of education from being socio-oriented to science-oriented. And he said the Frenchmen will no longer deal with civic courses like CRE, like GHC, those who can remember, or social studies, anything that was awakening our consciousness. He said the French people will deal with mathematics and pure sciences, so that they may not revolutionize the mind of the French people. That is how government is able to control the civil awakening or the civil consciousness that is arising today. So, unfortunately, this government does not realize that the constitution that we gave unto ourselves has a concrete creed of freedom of expression. It does not understand that we have a concrete creed and we have a covenant with the people of Kenya. That the covenant is so sacrosanct and so sacred that the people of Kenya shall access information and shall express that information in the manner in which they so wish. Then we are told again by the same sacrosanct creed that in the event one is aggrieved by the statement that I make, you take the civil way of addressing it. You do not take the liberty of trying to silence me. And that's why we came all out on that day. Why were we all in court? And why shall we be in court again to defend any other person who is going to be arrested on this heinous and protracted fight against the freedom of expression? We are doing this because we want to tell our people that you have a freedom, you have the freedom of expression. And you should not be limited insofar as that exercise of the freedom does not infringe any person's rights or freedoms. We came out so that we could demonstrate to all and sundry that we shall be out in defense of our constitution, and any person who wants to express himself should express himself in whatsoever manner that he or she wishes. And should the regime arrest you, be thou informed that we shall be there to defend you to our last drop, to our last man. So I'm giving them courage this morning that they should be out to express themselves. If you're discontented with the finance bill, express yourself through the media. Go out on the streets to express yourself. And you might want to ask yourself where I'm coming from.
And also to ask that these things that you're saying can be done, whether they fall within the law, because
they must they must fall within the law.
They must, or they do.
Whatever you do.
It's a different question here, Wakili. They do fall within the law, or they should fall within the law?
One, they fall within the law, and not just any other law. The Constitution itself, the supreme law of the land. And I'm also giving a caution that as and when you get out to express yourself within the confinement of the Constitution, make sure that you are doing what is lawful. For example, the exercise of Article 37, the right to picket, the right to demonstrate. Insofar as that you exercise that right to demonstrate within the confinement of the Constitution, you respect people's properties, you're not violent, you're working within the defined code of conduct of demonstration. You are free to move to the streets even today. It is not a right that is guaranteed or given unto you by the state. It's an inherent right that is given to you by your maker and by your creator. And therefore the state should not and shall not determine when and how and where you shall exercise that right. And as I sum up, remember the alternative of Article 37 is to give the Kenyan people a leeway of exercising their sovereignty. Remember when I began, I told you that we have two systems or two mechanisms in which we can exercise our sovereignty. We can either exercise our sovereignty directly, where I, Ndegwa, go to the street to say I am opposed to the finance bill, or I can send a memorandum to Parliament through an email, where I'm telling Parliament, consider these views. But when you send a memorandum to Parliament, you are arrested. So what happens is that you are left to exercise your residual powers under Article 37. Because currently, the Article 37 has constitutionalized and institutionalized our streets. That is therefore to say that our streets is the other institutions where our voice can be heard from.
You see, when you talk about the cybercrime that is being alleged, I just want to quote what Kuria told members of the Republic on what they can do. And this is what he said, and I quote him: to ensure inclusive participation, please submit your views virtually via QR code that was given. And this time round, we committed to moving beyond the traditional model, which is people appearing in barazas.
Yes.
And digital engagement will not only save time, but also ensure more Kenyans can participate meaningfully. By the time the chairperson, finance committee was sending this communication, it was simply inviting Kenyans to send these emails and through QR codes and everything.
Absolutely.
So as you speak about the crime is not anchored in any law, then appears as though the only message that should be heard is yes sir, we want
yes sir, yes. And that's the unfortunate of this regime. A regime that is failed, a regime that has failed, a regime that is failing, a regime that cannot survive the will of the people behaves in this manner. Because we cannot be a yes sir nation. We cannot be a yes sir people. We are a people who are independent. We are a people who exercise our free consciousness to think and to do things in the manner as prescribed by the Constitution and by the law.
You know, there's so many interpretations, Wakili, and I know you have a question. Okay, just a minute. There's so many interpretations as to what can or cannot happen, right? And so here are the people. It's obvious that there's some kind of friction. There's something that's, uncomfortable in the seat, as it were, and that folks feel that they need to then come out and either one, express themselves, number two, educate others, simplify things, so we can all be kind of on the same page. But then there would be this other voice that says, well, there needs to be an element of control that's applied when certain things happen. And I come back to that question. Do rights end? Does sovereignty end? Or is it something that continues to flow naturally? Does it end at some point where the governance bodies will be able to come in and say, well, actually, you know what? Yes, you are free. You have rights, but only until
I love that
here.
question, dude. Let me tell you, government is subservient to the people. Government is subordinate to the people. The people are above government because the people are the ones that confers government with the responsibility of executing functions, and that these functions are people-oriented. People do not create a government so that the government can become a monster. People create a government so that the government can in return be able to serve the people. And therefore, the government is subordinate to the people, and therefore the people are the sovereign. Because it is the people who confers this power to government. That is to say, that sovereignty has no end. Sovereignty is perpetual. Sovereignty flows like a river. It has a start. It starts when you are born and ends when the people, and does not end. As long as the people are in existence, sovereignty will always be supreme. And therefore, our people must understand this clearly, that a police officer is not above you. Mr. William Ruto is not above you. Mr. Kindiki is not above you. Neither the Chief Justice, nor the court, or any other person who is above me as an individual. Why? Because the constitutional design that we created, the constitutional architecture is that we have created a servanthood leadership. A servanthood leadership, that means that the governed becomes the servant. I, the people, becomes the master. And as soon as the people realizes this, they will not bow down to ask for services to be delivered. It is the responsibility of government to deliver these services. It's not a favor that the government is doing to us when we tell them we want to give our views in terms of this finance bill. And what will happen is this, Eric, Dennis. What will happen is, if you block the system of us forwarding your emails, our emails to you, if you arrest us for forwarding the email to you, we shall take to the streets, because you cannot silence our voices. So they should not think that they are going to use the court as a mechanisms, and the DPP and the police are the mechanisms of silencing us.
But
we shall opt for the next option of taking to the streets, so that we can shout from the streets for anybody who bothers to hear.
But then there's also this counter argument. You have these rights.
Yes.
You're within your constitutional rights, and you have these freedoms.
Correct.
But so do other people. So
Yes, they do.
where do you then draw the line in terms of limits? So you can go to the streets.
Yes.
I want to drive to work. I want to open my business.
Yes.
But because I can't open my business or drive to work because you are on the streets, and you're obstructing me from doing my business, am I also not then within my right?
You are right. Your argument is correct.
So where do we have these limits then? Because
what we are saying is, we are synthesizing our people. We are sanitizing our movement to make sure that they understand that when we take to the streets, we must not interfere with the next person who is operating his kiosk or his shop or who is driving to work. That person who has decided to drive to work, let him or her drive to work. That person who has decided to open his kiosk, let him or her open it without interference. And that's a civic education which you are giving to the people. And the moment we attain that threshold, nobody will come to tell you that you should not go to the streets. But unfortunately, we are dealing with a regime that is so apprehensive and a regime that fears the people. And that is a tragedy. The people put you in power, and then you become the enemy of the people. And that's the tragedy this country is facing. That the regime itself does not feel embraced by the people. Of course, going by what the people said yesterday, the other day, that they have lost 75% of the support of the people. In civilized democracies, a regime such as this one would hang the boots and go. But because we are being led by uncivilized men and women who have no courtesy of deciding when the people have withdrawn their support, when the people have withdrawn their supremacy, when the people have withdrawn their sovereignty, they cannot hang the boots. So if this was happening in a place like, say, the UK, today, Mr. William Ruto would be tendering his chicken in Sugoi, because he would have gone long time ago, because he has lost the support of the people.
Ndegwa, my rights end where Okari's
That's correct.
begin, right? I want to bring this with regard to the cybercrime that Njeri are allegedly committed.
Yes.
Can the government say that my right to have a smooth system stops where you jam my system?
No, the government cannot be the
Seems
nyapara.
like that's what they're saying.
The government cannot be the nyapara of how I'm going to exercise a right that is inherent and given to me by God. The government cannot be the prefect. The government cannot be the policeman. The government cannot be the commander who tells me that Ndegwa, I should not speak the manner in which I'm speaking. If you feel that I have offended you in the manner in which I'm speaking, if you feel that I should not tell Mr. William Ruto that you have lost confidence of the people and that you should resign because 75% of the Kenyans do not believe in you, what offense have I committed? And how has that infringed your right? As my neighbor, so as to say that I should not express myself in this manner because I'm offending you.
You're hurting my feelings.
Unfortunately, in matters governance, we are not dealing with emotions of love and affection. We are dealing with the manner and and a question of putting into place a government that is responsive to the people of Kenya.
It does seem as though what should set precedent and maybe also what should instill fear in people then is now playing against each other.
Yes.
That, and perhaps it's a tactic, not perhaps, that we've seen this, and not just
it's a tragedy by a weak and feeble regime.
And we've seen this, that the censoring of spreading of information or coming out right and being very clear about is something that has been used for across the globe.
Yes.
And that flies in the face of constitutionalism and, just freedom of expression.
That's correct.
how can you then say that I want to be, because we call for it all the time, don't we? Democracy as an ideology calls for citizen-centered participation in governance.
That's correct.
It calls for that. How do you do that while remaining within the ambit of the law and at the same time being an informed and participating citizen? How do you do that when you see, okay, I could say something, but then I could very well not make it home tonight? I could say something and I could be also in jail for 4 days before then being presented to court.
Yes.
How then do you play with that very, very normal reality that's facing a lot of people today?
How to play about that issue is to make sure that a regime must understand and must accept that it will be criticized in the morning, lunchtime, and in the evening. Even in our dreams, we'll sleep criticizing a regime such as this one that is led by Mr. William Ruto. So the system must be responsive and must create some shock absorbers and be able to understand that the Constitution has created two systems, or two sides, the minority and the majority. For them who feels that they support the government, they have a right to support that government. And they have a right to support it without being intimidated.
Okay.
Me who feels, Ndegwa, that I cannot support this government, I cannot fathom supporting this government, I cannot dream or even imagine supporting this government, I too have that right. I have that freedom. The government should not perceive me as an enemy because I'm criticizing it. The government should not perceive me as an undesired character. And the government should be able to know that it is a democratic right that I'm exercising. But now we need to change the manner in which we think. And that's why I agree with Okari when he said we need to reset this country. Because the guys who are leading us, the software that they are using is a Pentium 2 software. Is a Pentium 2 software. They do not even understand. That's why a member of parliament will go and say, help us God to create, to control social media. And my question was, when you are starting to pray for social media, ulikuwa inataka iokoke, iende binguni, ama ulikuwa unataka ifanye nini? Because that is Pentium 2 ideology. Pentium 2 approach when we are speaking of the AI. You know? So, these guys who have these ideologies and the Pentium 2 thinking, we must get rid of them.
Wakili.
And not just getting rid of them. Also, supporting them with guys with which Pentium now is currently in Pentium what? We must be in Pentium 15 now. We shall support them with the Pentium 15 hard disks. Yes.
Okay, my question, I want to go back to the case of Rosenjerry as a classic example of numerous arrests that we have seen. I'm referring to, the abductions, arrests, and all this, because you've been in all these cases, or most of them. Now, if the court, or as a lawyer, just explain it to me, if the court were to apply the law strictly and impartially based on how the arrests are made, detention circumstances, should this be the first considerations looking at the key violations and implications? Because we look at the rights of arrested persons in Kenya and Article 49 of the Constitution. In the case of Rosenjerry, so you're presented to court, you have a charge sheet. Should then should the court then look at a summary of the violations first of this person that has been presented? Or how do these arguments go? Because I'm looking at, this is just an example, a precedent, just to put this into context, where a Kenyan court, MKO versus Attorney General, 2015, where illegal detention beyond 24 hours in that example was ruled unconstitutional, and therefore the court couldn't hear the case. But now we see classic examples of so many arrests in the case of Rosenjerry. You go to court as lawyers. How should the court then demonstrate how it applies this,
First
the
of
law?
all, let's Okari understand that when is a detention considered to be an illegal detention? A detention is considered to be an illegal detention if it goes past 24 hours. The Constitution has created avenues where even arrest is done on a day when a person cannot be presented before the court. You'll be presented in the most available opportune when the courts are available. That is to say that from the time she was arrested on Friday up to the time she was taken to the court, that was not an illegal detention, to be honest.
Okay.
It was not an illegal detention.
From Friday till
the day she was
till Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay.
It was not an illegal detention because the state was careful enough to present her before court before the lapse of 24 hours.
Okay.
The mistake that occurred was the failure by the OCS to afford her bail or bond, noting that all offences in this country are bailable, including murder, including treason. Even William Ruto himself was bailed when he was charged with an offence of crimes against humanity for the Kiambaa Church and others. He was also bailed because most of the offences from the international law jurisprudence, they are now bailable.
Okay.
But now the question that Okari then should be asking is, when an OCS fails to grant you bail on such kind of an offence, should we just stop at that? When the law is so express that you should be granted bail? But when we went to the OCS on that particular day, on Friday and on Saturday, the OCS alleged that this is not I'm not the person who has remanded this person. The person has been remanded by the DCI. So they say, if you want Jerry to be released, go to the DCI. And that's a disconnect and the system within which this government is using to abuse office and power. So if today you are arrested, Dennis, and taken to Kamukonji police station by the DCI, it is presumed that the OCS in charge of Kamukonji police station has no power to release you on bail. Yet is a person who is in charge of that police station. So they are using those systems and cat and mouse ways of abusing their office and their power. What are we then saying? We are saying, if you are the OCS in charge of a particular police station, you must exercise your powers constitutionally. You must be able to understand that for whatsoever offense that one is alleged to have committed, and such as this one, which is ordinarily a misdemeanor, you must admit that person to bail. The DCI's power must be confined to investigations, but not to the administration of justice within a police station. That is to say, when we take over power and government, these officers who are behaving this irresponsibly, we shall put them to account.
Okay, before you take over power,
yes,
still on that line of thought, I don't want to lose it. So I've been arrested.
Yes,
I'm detained in some police station.
And don't postpone this idea of taking power for so long. We want it like yesterday.
The whole bond bail thing. What about access to legal advice or to a lawyer?
Imagine it is a constitutional right. And not just a constitutional right. In the Constitution, we have the categories of rights. We have those rights that can be limited, we have those that cannot be limited. We call them derogable and non-derogable rights. A right that cannot be limited is a right to access to legal representation.
Okay.
That right cannot be limited. That OCS limited that right to Njeri. And that's why we are saying, when the rubber shall meet the road, at that particular point, that OCS shall be called to answer. Are you bigger than the Constitution? Are you larger than the Constitution? Mr. OCS in charge of Pangani, are you larger than the Constitution? Mr. OCS in charge of, or Mr. OCS in charge of police station of Pangani, are you bigger than the Constitution? Are you the one to determine when a right should be enjoyed or when should not be enjoyed?
On this OCS.
So that is to say, as we go to that OCS, Njeri has a recourse against that individual, that police officer alone, because she's the one who violated the Constitution. And therefore, we are going to court and prosecute that OCS in or her own capacity without involving the state, because she is in charge of implementing and observing the authority of the Constitution at that level of the police station, so that then we are able to teach these officers and these OCS some manners and some lessons that you must respect the Constitution, that any authority, be it the IG, be it the CS for Interior, be it Mr. William Ruto, they are all under the authority of this constitution. No one is above this constitution. Therefore, when you tell me that that is order from above, it's a nonsensical way of addressing that issue.
Because the constitution
is above William Ruto.
All of this
is above the IG. The IG is subservient to the people. This IG is subordinate to the constitution. So who is this who is larger than the constitution?
That's a question for us to kind of end this particular conversation on, because if anything comes through here, that the constitution ought to be that,
absolutely
board that you bounce all of this.
It is the cardinal north.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the north you must face. Wakili Ndu Okoh has been our guest this hour. Our Justice Thursday conversation has been around an issue that's currently ongoing, but then pointing to issues in the legal and judicial world that we continue to put our eyes on.
Yes.
Your last words in 10 seconds.
My last point is that there are those who are asking, who are calling people who are in the one-term movement tribal. Our argument is one. If you're able to mobilize the Kikuyus, mobilize the Kambas, mobilize the Luyas, mobilize the Luos, mobilize any tribe on the basis of that unit alone, with the objective of removing Mr. William Ruto from power, then that is positive mobilization and positive use of our ethnic strength.
And not tribal.
Number two,
quickly.
Any person, there are those who are asking who will be a presidential candidate. I am telling our supporters, that should not worry you. Any person who subscribes to the ideology and the philosophy of the one-term movement is a potential presidential candidate. The only qualification is that you prescribe to the faith and the belief that Mr. William Ruto is a one-term president. Any person is potential, can be a presidential candidate, including Mr. Okari here, Ndu Okoh.
Maybe not me, but okay.
As long as you prescribe to that faith and that ideology and the philosophy of one movement, you're a potential presidential candidate.
Thank you so much for being on Justice Thursday today. Good morning, folks. 9:02.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Edwin Lisamira. Constitutional lawyer Ndu Okoh has criticized the government over the recent arrest of software developer Rose Njeri, who was charged with 2 counts under the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act. The charges stem from a program she developed which reportedly facilitated Kenyans to send mass emails with their views on the 2025 finance bill to the National Assembly's Finance Committee. The prosecution claimed Njeri obtained unauthorized access to Parliament's computer systems and interfered with traffic for their email addresses. Banjiru, who appeared on the ongoing Situation Room show here on SpiceFM, said Njeri did nothing wrong and her arrest is part of government efforts to silence critics.
The innocent girl represents a bigger cross-section of the society that is discontented with what is happening in this country. She represents the group that was out in the streets on the 25th of June 2024. And remember, what took us to the street as at that time was the same reason that Rose was responding to. So in a manner to create fear, in a manner to create intimidation, in a manner to silence the voices of the individuals who may be discontented with the current finance bill, they had to arrest her.
The lawyer maintained that Njeri is innocent, noting that the National Assembly did not limit Kenyans on how to respond when submitting views on the finance bill via email.
They never created the barriers or restrained individuals on how you should respond to the invitation. So she responded in that manner and also facilitated other individuals who wanted to participate to have an interaction with the parliament. So the question therefore was, if she's responding to an invitation and there's a prima facie presumption that the person who has published this website, Parliament, wants to have an interaction with the people of Kenya, how has she then committed an offense?
Kitale Chief Magistrate Samuel Mokua declined a request by the prosecution to detain 3 political allies of Trans Nzoia Governor George Natembeya for 10 days. Sinyereri MCA John Mohanu, former Associate MCA Bernard Muganda, and the Governor's Protocol Officer Frank Wabwire were on Wednesday presented in court under tight security. Mohanu and Wabwire were arrested on Tuesday outside Milimani Law Court, while Muganda was picked by DCI officers from his Associate home in Cherengani on Monday. The suspects face charges of obstructing EACC officials and causing malicious damages to vehicles the officers were using during a search raid at Governor Natembeya's home in Kitale. Officials in Tanzania have dismissed as mere personal opinions allegations by activist Boniface Mwangi and his Ugandan counterpart Agatha Atuhaire that they were tortured and sexually assaulted in custody by Tanzanian police. Dar es Salaam Special Police Zone Commander Jumanne Muliru said the activists should have reported any abuse through official channels.
Huu ni maoni yao, ni mtizamo wao. Kama wanachokisema ni hivyo, basi officiate kwenye mamlaka ya kuchunguza. Wangetekwa, yani mimi naiona ni kama ni mtizamo, ni maoni. Wangekuwepo mimi ningehojiana nao. Nilitamani kama angekuwa ni yeye ndio anaongea na mimi ili nimuulize vitu vingi ili niwe kwa nafasi nzuri ya kujua anaongea kitu gani.
This comes 2 days after PLP leader Martha Karua called on the international community to launch investigations into what she described as cross-border abductions in East African community member states following the activist release. Karua called on the African Union through the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and the UN Human Rights Council to establish a commission of inquiry into human rights abuses in Tanzania, Uganda and Kenya. A U.S. judge has temporarily halted deportation proceedings against the family of a man accused of Sunday's petrol bomb attack on Jewish demonstrators in Colorado. Mohammed Soliman, aged 45, is accused of a federal hate crime and other charges. Officials say his family, who are not charged in the attack, are Egyptian citizens. U.S. District Judge Gordon Gallagher, a Biden appointee, ordered deportation proceedings to be halted a day after the White House said it had six one-way tickets to deport the wife and 5 children from the U.S. That's the news wire. I'm Edwin Lisamira.
Willing.
.4 Spice FM. Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
It is 7 minutes after 9 o'clock and into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, this Thursday. And wow, just finishing a Justice Thursday conversation this morning and getting into what can or should be done. And true north, or the cardinal north, is the Constitution. We get into a conversation right around the right track or a dead end, and whether the nation is at a crossroads. And he's in the hot seat already. He's been here before. We know that. Former Agriculture Minister Kipruto Arab Kirwa is our guest for this hour. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you doing?
Very well, I thank God.
Good to see you.
Asante.
Good to see you here.
Yes.
We saw you the other day behind 2 microphones.
Yes.
Maybe you'll tell us about that in just a little bit.
Which one?
The 2 microphones story. But we'll get into that in just a moment.
Yes.
So we're going to say Karibu Sana properly.
Yes.
Dennis will tell you what country we're in this week for our proverb, and then we would like to hear your interpretation of the same.
Yes, so still in Africa, but in the southern part, South Africa, to be specific, Eswatini. Eswatini is within South Africa. Yes. How that works, only them can explain, yes, right? Yes. But the proverb today is the antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit. The antelope that is constantly moving will fall in a pit. What do you make of that?
Well, that's a very interesting kind of statement because it means if you move aimlessly without considering the terrain, you are likely to get into trouble in one way or the other.
because, of course, given the landscape of Botswana, it's expansive and it is full of hostilities to many animals, especially an animal like an antelope. So if it keeps on moving without checking the radar, it's likely to get into trouble, either into some kind of pit or it's likely to be eaten by other animals, especially the, what do you call them? The predators.
Predators. Yeah.
Well, there you go. And it's interesting that we talk about the likely to be eaten by predators. It could be akin to a lot of the political staging that we see happening in the country at the moment. Oftentimes we tell ourselves, Waziri, that we should stay away from the politics of things and focus on the development of things, focus on the everyday things that are happening in a way to try and make the country better. Unfortunately, what grabs the stage is the politics of things, because there are many individuals over and over again who want to state or stake their claim to be part of leadership that would eventually lead towards this development that everybody keeps talking about. Now, when that happens, we often see that there are cocoons that form. Those cocoons, people will today call them political parties. People will call them other things. People will call them movements. People will call them coalitions, even on a grander scale, broad-based government. And those things are happening as we see them today. Just the other day, it would appear as though you've thrown your support behind one of these entities as well. And we wanted to pick at that a little bit and see then where you were and what essentially you're bringing towards this particular grouping.
Well, it's very interesting that in Africa, there is poverty of political parties that qualify in the true sense of the word. I've had the privilege of doing research in one of my papers about political parties in Africa. And I realized apart from one or two countries, such as Tanzania, despite the fact that they don't seem to be doing very well in the democratic phase, but in terms of political movement, CCM has survived the times, because a political party that is able to transit from one or two leadership positions and get into the fifth or the sixth position of a leader who comes from a different region from the original leader of that particular country qualifies to be political party in the parameters that I was able to identify. The other country is South Africa. Despite the challenges that ANC is faced today with, it is one of the political entities that has lived beyond Mandela. And the third country that has some semblance of a political party system is the country that we've just gotten the issue of the antelope, that's Botswana. But Botswana is unique in a way that they believe in some kind of chieftaincy. Remember, even the first president, Serese Khama, was supposed to have been a chief until he married a Mzungu wife, and therefore he was almost defrocked from that position. But of course, he scaled up the leadership to the national level and became the president of that country. But organically, in that country, it is done alongside some kind of chieftaincy, such that the current president, to get into a coalition with a number of other entities, including the party of Ian Khama, for him to be able to beat his former boss, President Masisi. That is how the current president of Botswana was able to win in the last election. So, but by large, parties, especially in Kenya, are either grafted around an individual or around a coalition of tribes, such that for the last 25 years, without any fear of contradiction, no entity, formation, coalition has formed itself and fought over two elections. Remember, it was NAC, then it went to PNU. From PNU, it was TNA and URP. From that, it was Jubilee. From Jubilee, now it became Kenya. It is Kenya Kwanza. Likewise, in the opposition, it has been facing the same configuration where we were talking about NASA at some stage, we were talking about Azimio in the last election in the opposition. So in a way, we are yet to form organic political parties that, despite the changes in leadership, it does not change the kind of configuration as a political entity. To get back to what you've just said, yes, I left Kenya Kwanza on the eve of the last general election, 2022.
Yes.
I moved to Azimio and have remained so in the opposition. And therefore, any formation of an entity that seems to be opposed to the politics of Kenya Kwanza seems to have a home in my heart. And therefore, the people in the opposition today, whether it is the Honorable Kalonzo, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, the Honorable Martha Karua, and many other people, including the latest of our colleagues, the Honorable Fred Matiang'i. These are people we are trying to navigate the landscape of this country with the hope that we will do two things. One, provide effective leadership that is based on serious political institutions without making it look like it is an issue of an individual. Two, we are trying to form an entity that whoever is chosen as a presidential candidate or a team that is going to be given a chance to lead this country is just the first among equals. So that we leave this issue where somebody thinks is the best and therefore anybody else does not mean anything. The second issue, which I feel is very critical, we must also be willing to accept that every generation has its own set of leaders. I became a member of parliament at the age of 31, and that is about 37 years ago. This therefore means there are many people who are half or less than half my age who qualify to be members of parliament in the constituency that I represented about 20 years ago. Why am I saying so? In the history of East Africa, Mwalimu Nyerere at the age of 63 was able to do, and in the process, he imported a word into Kiswahili called kungatuka. At the age of 63, when he was forming his last cabinet, he said of necessity, half of the cabinet must be under 40. This included his own Prime Minister, the late Edward Muringe Sokoine. This therefore means that a particular example by Nyerere, and he just didn't say he wanted just young people. He said, I want young people who understand the dynamics of this country. But the people I've been with for the last 24 years, we have the same thinking, and we are likely not to infuse into the potability of the country if I have to hand over to somebody my age or slightly younger than me. So that's the way I look at politics in Kenya today, and we must have the courage.
You mentioned the aspirations of Mzee Nyerere and his aspirations of the young people being included in the leadership of Tanzania. And we look at the country and where we find ourselves today. The Gen Z that is spoken about every other day are pushing to have a seat on the table. Now, one would want to ask, how is the formation that you are in moving things around to ensure that the Gen Z is not just a political vehicle or a card that is there to be given handouts, but that they are part and process of leadership in the country?
Well, the way I look at society and any formation of leadership must be a reflection of society in a way that the way society is, those of my age and above, we are only 3% of the population of Kenya today. A majority of people are people under 50. And of course, those who are in management positions could be, let's say, between 30 and 50. And this therefore means in whatever we do, and I'm not the spokesperson for the coalition, but I'm just giving my own opinion as Kirwa. The way I just believe is whoever is chosen as a presidential candidate, whether he is above 50 or below 50, must of necessity realize that for this country to make progress, we must create a clear transitional vehicle that will allow young people increasingly to be part of the decision making. And it should not just be decision making. It should be informed decision making in the sense that whoever is given a chance to run a particular department of government must be somebody with the requisite capacity, with the necessary education background, and also with the opportunity to be given a chance to be at the bargaining table. I remember in 2002, we were 8 members of the summit, led by President Kibaki, and I was one of them. I was much younger than most of the other members, and I had a lighter constituency in terms of the votes I brought to the table were not as many as those votes were to be brought by the late Wamalwa, Mheshimiwa Ngilu, Mheshimiwa Saitoti, Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka, or Mheshimiwa Raila, or Kibaki himself. But they gave me that opportunity as part of the national mosaic, that yes, be here. And I want to urge young people, when you are given an opportunity, please realize it is not because you are so important, but you identify with certain aspirations. I'm disappointed by some of the young people. During the demonstration about Gen Z, they were at the forefront. But now they are falling into being party supporters, and individuals, we realize their threshold was so low that when they were given that opportunity, it got into their heads. And they thought they were so important, they did not realize the aspirations they were identifying with were important, but not themselves as individuals. That is the quagmire that I find myself in. Yes, how young? And how do we infuse in them the fact that when you are given an opportunity, you are just a facilitator of a bigger issue than yourself? I will just remind you that President Kenyatta was over 70 when he took over the reins of power in this country. But his cabinet still remains the youngest. The youngest in the sense that he had people who are as young as 29, the late Dr. Sakari Onyonka. He had people at the age of 32, Daniel Musyoka Mutinda from Kitui. He had people who were PSS at the age of 25, the late David Mwiraria. People, the late Stanley Njindo Matiba. So Kenyatta understood, yes, I may be 80, I may be 70-something, but this country, majority of them are younger people. That's why he had one of the youngest cabinet that has ever been formed in Kenya. Today, let anybody challenge me. Apart from people like Ndu Okoh, who was the minister in state of in the office of the president, the late Jackson Harvester Angaine, many of them were people below 50, including the Attorney General at that particular time, the late Charles Njonjo.
The understanding from all of this comes that that the will in the hearts of those who put themselves up for leadership is actually for a better nation and is actually for the uplifting of the livelihoods of its people. That is what the assumption is. Sadly and unfortunately, we see as things have moved over time that it is not the interest of the people that fuels the activation of going to seek a place in leadership. It's not. Unfortunately, it's usually for political and personal expediency. How do people then resonate with choosing a leader whose intent really is not for you as a people? They have cross purposes completely.
Well, at times when before people get into politics, they hate politicians. And when they get into politics, they become worse than the politicians who preceded them. The issue is that it is a reflection of our society. What I think we need to do as a country is to do what I consider as social re-engineering of our nation. To be able to infuse into the minds of Kenyans a certain way of respecting institutions. Whatever has happened, especially in the current regime, the president from the beginning of time, he emasculated political parties. He emasculated parliament, both the National Assembly and the Senate. He destroyed the confidence that we had in judiciary by ensuring that all issues are done not according to the law, but according to the whims of the executive. And even within the executive, he has destroyed the structure of executive. Because the structure of executive must also have its own internal communication where there are checks and balances. Look at the issue of the seal that we've been grappling with. Even if, let's assume the seal had not moved, although I was very keen to listen to the Attorney General, the current Attorney General, the word she used is that legally the seal has not moved from our office. So for those of us who had good English teachers in high school, she was very clear. It may not have moved legally, but physically the seal might have moved, because legal and actual are two different things. You remember the issue of de jure and de jure and de facto. So de jure, the seal may still be with the office of the Attorney General, but de facto the seal might have moved from the office of the Attorney General. And when such internal communication fails, then that is destruction of the institution of the executive by somebody who believes that he is the only one who knows everything, even in fields that he has not been trained in.
Currently, we know all the problems and the issues that are going on in the country, and some of what you've just talked about, respecting the institutions and all that. The main issue here and the conversation, and maybe my question is, how then do we move forward, is you look at the political party configurations that you referred to and how they've morphed from the original parties. Is it a case of you're just changing vehicles, but it's the same person? And I'm saying this because I'm Dennis Okari, I'm the same person today. My leadership style, my ideology, my faith, my belief system, my vision will not necessarily change tomorrow because I've changed my clothes. What we seem to see today with all these current realignments is it is the same people, just changing vehicles. We're not seeing anything really fresh. How then do we move from the culture of moving configurations to actually having a conversation around what this country needs, a reset, like you referred? How do we do it?
Well, I refer to as I was talking about social re-engineering of the nation. It means also the public must of necessity rise to the occasion. When you hear of issues like corruption, the public is part of corruption network, in the sense that when you go to the constituency tomorrow, and you want to run in a certain constituency from where you come, you are likely to be asked to pay certain services, certain rent for that space to be given to you, for somebody to listen to you. And that is the money that we give in every election. And at times people spend, as a member of parliament, somebody spends close to 50 million. And yet we know the salaries and allowances and the cost of being in that office for 5 years is likely to be, and the benefits accrued is likely to be smaller than that. But then why do people get into those positions? For example, a member of parliament. Today, a member of parliament has been enticed by what we call NGCDF, which is money that is meant for the public, but now the member of parliament is refusing with it because he wants to be the person doling out contracts to various individuals. And yet also the public seems to be supporting that particular position. So my take is that, yes, we cannot make over overnight, but we need to consciously understand the beginning point is for us to get a leader who will respect other leaders. That's why I was saying we are not looking for an individual who is coming from outer space. We are looking for an individual who will accept that is just first among the equals. That's why I was telling you, I was sitting at the same table with the Honorable Kibaki, and we did not have the same weight. If we were to be sitting in a seesaw, the weight would be overwhelmingly in favor of Kibaki. But they accepted that, yes, you are sitting among us, and we respect you, and my opinion was carry the day. Today, if we wanted to make change, we would need to infuse into our system younger people and the people who will also accept that corruption is anathema. Otherwise, we see some of the people, the other day, we know the prices of these vehicles. They did not have a vehicle. Now they have vehicles. They are moving as if they have been on this space for so long. Then you ask yourself, where did this person get the money to buy the kind of vehicle he's using? When some of these vehicles, they go between 11 and 18 million. Are these the change makers that we expect to change our society? The answer for me is no. But so to be young does not mean you are less corrupt.
I mean, I just want to segue from the question that Dennis asked, because the thing is that what we do see is that we see people today who are offering themselves up or to be part of coalitions that have been in the political arena for the last 30 years. That's the truth.
Yes.
And that over those 30 years, if we were to ask the significant change that has been made, we may see a few things here and there, but we have the people who were stirring the pot in 1990 still stirring the pot in 2025. Can we truly get a different thing coming out of the kitchen?
I'm one of them, so
yes,
I'm not being defensive, and that's why I was very clear that if I was to be, I'm not going to overstay my invitation. But the circumstances have changed. 1990, that is the wall. That is when the Berlin Wall collapsed.
Yes,
and that is when now democracy came back to town. And some of the individuals who have been here, they did not have the opportunity to serve at that particular level. Remember, President Kibaki was vice president for 12 years, and many people would have written him off. But for the period he served us, he was able to do a lot of transformation. I'm not saying if you cannot perform at this level, you will perform better when you go up. Because at times, in those of us who have done a bit of human resource and industrial psychology, we know at times you can move up to the extent that you become incompetent. And there are some of the people even leading the country today. If they had left the stage last year or before they became what they are today, possibly people would have yearned for them to be in political leadership. But now, society has promoted them to a level of incompetency. And this therefore means, yes, it's not about age, it's not about longevity, it's about what is your paradigm. Are you changing? For me, I'm willing to change, to hand over to young generation. But that handover must also be within the basic tenets of the law and the basic tenets and practices of society. That's why in the run-up to GNC demonstration, my main worry was, when you evict the president from State House, what is the alternative method of doing it? But now, God is giving us 2027 for us to decide whether the current CEO of the country is going to be retained or is going to be changed.
Yeah.
And when you change, you must ask yourself, am I changing for a better person or a better team of people, or am I changing for the sake of change?
There's a question still on this political party configuration.
Yeah.
There's a picture that was taken off now for those who are opposing this current regime. And somebody raised a question that there is no single young person or a fresh face that you can say, maybe let's listen to this person. It's the same old people. My question is this. Who eats at the table? You were at the table with Kibaki and you accorded that opportunity, and you said you didn't have the kind of weight that would have given you that opportunity. However, looking at the current political structure, it almost feels like when you're coming to the table, you must come with a voting basket. Must come with a block or your community. Beyond that, there is also funds. A lot of these young people don't have access to resources, can't even access loans because they have no securities.
Right.
So you have somebody who wants to get into leadership, they have a vision, but will they honestly find space in the current political setup to say, hey, I may not have the money, I don't have the voting block at the moment, but this is my vision. Will they have that space?
Well, that's a very good question. A good question in the sense that I'm of the same school. But at times, if you are not given that opportunity, you may not be able to leverage on the space that you've been given, however limited it is. Now, my take is that what we're planning in our corner of the Republic is to be able to have a number of organs within the totality of the coalition, where there is an opportunity for young people not to be told what to do, but to be able to have an input in the kind of change that we envisage for this country. So that they create their own agenda, and that agenda is taken to be part and parcel of the totality of the leadership of the People's Coalition that we are now trying to form. In that way, we'll be able to respect their thinking because they live under different circumstances. When I was in high school, there were no mobile phones. When I was in high school, there was no, in fact, it came towards the tail end of my high school, what we call fax machine, which almost became some kind of earthquake, to the extent that the head of state at that particular time were wondering why fax machines were allowed in government offices. So, but today, fax machine is not a very complicated issue. Almost it's getting obsolete. So what am I saying? We want the young people to create their own agenda and to be part of a team. They cannot isolate themselves and expect to do a makeover of this society without the support of all other people within this space called Kenya.
When you talk about support that the young people need and require, as rightfully put by yourself and Dennis, there is the aspect of the promise that has been given over time. If you remember the current administration and the promise they gave to the young people, you will be part of this government, you'll be part of this conversation. But the moment the leadership took over now, we start seeing the question that Dennis is raising. You need to come in with your people, because that then poses a conversation around shares. And this is, yes, I'm headed that way. And you see now the people that we're talking about shares is the group of individuals who have formed this coalition, who are now the opposition. And one would want to ask, the trust deficit has gone. How do we repair that such that Kenyans will look at this coalition and say, finally we're being seen, we're being heard, we are there to make decisions. The trust is gone. How do we fix that?
Well, it's unfortunate that one individual is responsible for depriving the Kenyan people trust on their own leaders. My take is that we are not going to bring some kind of magic. What we need to do is that we are not giving them support. We're giving them opportunity or a platform. On that particular platform, they generate the agenda of the young people of this country. And that agenda must of necessity incorporate the basic challenges that we have about leadership in Kenya, including the issue of trust deficit. The second issue is also they must manage their egos, because there are only two problems in Kenya today among politicians. Is trust deficit from the public and also their own ego trip. If any coalition does not work, it's not because those people have any hate against each other. It will be because of ego trip. Because politicians must manage their own egos. Whatever separates ordinary Kenyans from politicians is ego trip.
Right.
And that ego trip, unless it is managed, it is likely to destroy even the best of coalitions. So my take is that we are creating a platform. And when you create a platform, then everybody qualifies to get to that platform and generate genuine and organic thinking process that will assist this country to move from what it is today. And that thinking process must of necessity ensure that we build institutions and respect presence of those institutions. You can have institutions, but you destroy them. And this is what I said at the beginning of the term of the current president.
Let's take a break at this point and then come back and continue with this conversation. We're looking at, all right, so is Kenya at a crossroads or is it at a dead end when it comes to then what it's looking for leadership, looking for governance? Former Agriculture Minister Kipruto Arap Kiro is our guest this hour. We'll look into that. We'll be back at 21 minutes to 10.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
One of the things that are ailing our country is negative ethnicity. you find you as a state officer, instead of thinking as a Kenyan, you think like a tribal person.
Let me tell you something. The biggest problem we have had in this country is a leadership deficit. There is nothing that you are going to do in the process of change if you are not a risk taker. So you really have to pursue your vision to a logical conclusion and even be ready to step on people's toes.
When it comes to the economy, you can't run away with it. They say statistics are like bikinis. They reveal a lot, but they conceal the vitals. And so government people would throw statistics at you and tell you they're revealing a lot of information to you, but it's really concealing the real vitals.
We need to get out of that, because when we want to grow our democracy, one basic thing that really requires to be understood by the political class, by all of us, is institutions are critical.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
It's 20 minutes to 10 o'clock, and we are having a conversation this morning with former Agriculture Minister Kipruto Arap Kirwa, who is also then lending his voice in the spaces in which we operate today. And we're asking ourselves that in terms of who the next leadership will be, or how the current leadership essentially should be able to then tweak its operations. I'm coming from the place whereby, Waziri, that I think that Kenyans mind what a leader does, not necessarily who he or she is. That it could be anybody, really. But if they're doing things constitutionally, if they're doing things forward thinking towards and for the livelihoods of Kenyans and protecting those spaces within which they ought to then thrive, that, Kenyans are all right with who does this or who leads this. And because of the fact that we've seen more or less the same people in the same pot, that is the grievance that Kenyans have today. How do we get out of that mindset and thinking?
I think we need to assist each other and remind ourselves of certain stories that we read from the Bible. Remember the guy who used to persecute Christians called Saul. He had his own Damascus moment. I do hope the leaders in the coalition that I belong to will also realize that they need their Damascus moment, where we downgrade the issue of ethnicity. We manage it, and we also downgrade the issue of personal ego, or some kind of thinking that it is I who will make the difference, and realize that it is our collective wisdom and effort that can assist this country to move from what it is to what it ought to be. Because this country has a huge potential. For the information of those who may not know, we have the best human resource perhaps in Africa, if not in the rest of the world. A human resource that has been well trained, with the necessary certification, despite whatever people talk about various problems. Ignore some of these people who get university degrees without going to any institution of higher learning. There are many Kenyans, whether they have diploma or certificate or degrees, who really merit that particular position. And that's why when Kenyans get out of this country, they do well, because they have the requisite capacity and the focus to do what is right. So my prayer is that Kenyans also should also accept that they ought to get also to their Damascus moment, where they don't say we are supporting so-and-so because he's one of our own.
Yeah. This is the thing that, sometimes I feel that there is a struggle inside, and as we try to break from it, that there's so many things that are happening at the same time, Waziri, that there's a development agenda that must be met. There is the subjective, softer side of things, where there is the expectation that leadership will do what it's meant to do, as well as the people be involved and part of this whole thing, because we are here sitting and thinking that leadership is here and the people are here, and that you need to do what you need to do so you keep us all together, without realizing that it is everybody together. But then also the spaces need to be created and protected by leadership to ensure that the people are involved in processes. But we seem to be caught up in this circus of who will then be at the position of power. And I think that is what robs away from the very character of governance. It strips it of its character. And that's what I keep asking myself, and I'm tormented because I say, when will we get to the point where we realize that it's everybody coming together, choosing right leadership, keeping them accountable, us also operating in the proper spaces? That is what is going to move a country forward, not these games that we see. Not somebody on one party today, on another party tomorrow. Not somebody saying, give me a stab at it, and if I don't get it, then I might as well join you. Because that's what we've seen easily for the last 20 years. When are we going to get to the point where we say it is moving forward that is most important? And grab onto that and go with it, because we seem to be just running around in futility without that north in sight.
Well, it's important that, yes, while I do not have the benefit of being a lawyer, but I made sure that the 2010 Constitution is a permanent feature in my car. And whenever I forget in the car, there is another one in the house. And the 2010 Constitution is so robust in ensuring that the things we talk about, if you are to have some fidelity to the 2010 Constitution, some of the issues that we are talking about do not arise. Why am I saying so? It gives almost a prescription to every decision that is taken in this country. And if we are to comply with that Constitution, we'll be able to respect human rights, we'll be able to respect institutions, because it is clear that the institutions, even the institution of society, is present in that Constitution by saying that there should be public participation in any decision taken at any stage. And that public participation must be informed public participation. Not a matter of just calling villagers and telling them this is what we've decided, how do you find it? It is informed by giving them the pros and cons. Otherwise, public participation is not complete without taking them through the process of informing them, so that when they decide yes or no, you'll have informed them. And that same Constitution gives us a chance to create separation of powers. Apart from judiciary, executive, and legislature, there are also constitutional offices, including the Electoral Commission, Judicial Service Commission, Land Commission, and other commissions created by the same Constitution. If we give respect to that, and we ensure that whoever is elected as president is reminded, you are swearing under this Constitution, and this Constitution must be respected, and anything that is going to abrogate the Constitution is null and void from the beginning of that pronunciation. But what are we doing? In the name of supporting the current president, we have allowed him to engage in excess bad manners to the extent that even something that is unconstitutional is allowed. So that is taken to court, and the court quite a number of times have annulled the position that had been taken by the judiciary, by the executive, at the expense of society. Look at some of the cases even still in court about impeachment of the former deputy president. The court process has annulled some of those positions. Without commenting into details of what the process is, we realize there are many decisions taken by the executive that were reversed by a court of law. What is the problem? The due process was not followed, because the government, the way I know it, almost in every government ministry, there is a legal officer or somebody who comes from the office of the Attorney General to assist the ministry to realign its issues within the law. And if the minister is not convinced by that legal officer in his ministry, he refers any matter to the office of the Attorney General. And in the office of the Attorney General, there are enough officers to inform any ministry. Unless somebody is sleeping on the job, there should be no problem about decisions taken by the government.
Oh, but come on, we've seen, that I think there's too many an example where we have seen that the law would make very clear what its position is and how we ought to follow it. And there are other parties who view this as a pure or mere suggestion. It's put out there, whether you choose to grab onto it or not, is really up to you. And we have allowed this to happen over and over and over again. And somehow we imagine that things should happen. And I was looking at some of the comments that folks are making that's been really, really spirited on our socials today. But one comment strikes me and says, you know what? If we were to follow the rule of law, period, we wouldn't have an issue. If we were to follow, and I'm just going to even call that out, and that is, I can't find it, but it's gone somewhere here. If we were just to follow the rule of law, we would not have any issue. And across board, whether it was from a leadership point of view, whether it was from a citizen point of view, whether it was you in your home, you at your workplace, you in your government position, you as member of parliament, you as MCA, you as senator, you as governor, you as president. If you were to follow the rule of law in everything that we did, holding the Constitution as the one guard, half of the things that we see today, we would not have problems with. Whether you are arrested or the arrestor, whether you are the lawmaker or the lawkeeper or the law follower. If we were to keep that front and center of everything that we did, I reckon that a lot of the issues that we see today, we wouldn't. And I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, I entirely agree with that particular statement, and I subscribe to it. And the only way we can do it is for us to have the courage to say no when you are required to say no. Otherwise, you run the risk of trying to be nice to individuals because you are seated in the same coalition, and also the public. And I can share you with you, because the public at times they say Kirwa is always in the opposition. I'm not in the opposition by choice. I'm in the opposition because I strongly believe that God gave me the opportunity to serve the people of Cherangani for 20 years, and it's a privilege. And therefore, if I was to do anything less than saying no when I'm required to say no, then I will be compromising the opportunity that God gave me to serve the people of Cherangani and make a name in this country. Who knew Kirwa before I became an MP? But because that space I've occupied for those 20 years, I say I must respect that space, not because of future benefits, but because I'm paying back to society what they gave to me for that particular period.
There's something you mentioned about institutions that should just be left to work. And if you look at even the current formation of parliament that we have right now, problems started immediately the government was formed. And what people, many have said that the president overtook parliament, but one would say it is parliament that ceded its power because it is an independent institution, simply because the president has said so. Therefore,
the law says so. The Constitution says so.
Yeah. So here we are in terms of even ensuring that public participation takes place. It is just another box to be ticked, And even as we speak in terms of dissent and how it is, we see that even some of leaders from your coalition as we speak right now, dissent is seen as though it is a crime and people have to apologize. People have to come and go back to their communities and apologize. When will we sit down and agree that dissent is acceptable, and even those who are dissenting, we are able to sit and find solutions to problems that we have?
Well, democracy is work in progress. Remember, our democracy is about 62 years old. And it has taken different forms from multi-party to one-party state, until we also made it de facto one-party. At some stage, de jure one-party stage, until the other day, about 20 years ago or more, that you are able to change over from now a new democratic dispensation. So this is work in progress, and there are some people who, because they have lived through these political bad manners, they have not been able to acquit themselves of bad manners, even including some people in my coalition. But we hope we'll be calling upon them to be able to change and realize that you are just an element or an actor in a play. And when your period of acting is over, the curtains fall, and you move to the backstage. And it is not it is just a privilege to be a leader or to be even an opinion shaper, because there are many people who are much more intelligent than I am, who are much more educated than I am, who are much more informed and more versatile that I can ever be. But when I get this privilege, I must also use it responsibly. This is something I hope will be able to ingrain in the mind of those who will be with us. And when we realize they are not behaving as we ought, but also the most important thing is also society. We've given privilege to politicians to the extent that they look like they are demigods. We must be able to tell them, we support you, but here you have exceeded the limit. Whether it is anybody in my coalition or even on the other coalition.
Who is to tell them that they would listen? Who do you think?
The public must say no. You realize the GNCs, Ruto was almost running out of town. That's why he had to look for Raila. Because he realized the country was moving away from him. If the invasion of parliament had been thought to be invasion of State House, those askaris would not have killed as many people as they would have gone to State House. But we thank God that kind of revolution never took place. Because for me, having gotten used to democracy for some time, whether it is perfect or not, I was worried. Should the president leave State House, who will occupy that vacuum? Who will be able to transit us? But then, we must be vigilant. These politicians are also fickle. They are human beings. They run for software options, what I usually call them lazy options. Otherwise, we must be very firm. If we realize it is not Dennis who qualifies to be the best person, to be the champion of our coalition, then we must change. But we hope the communities also accept, because for the last 62 years or so, we've been voting according to the tribe. There is no vote that has never taken that trajectory. Perhaps the 2002 Kibaki Tosha allowed Kenyans to come together. But it was so temporary. Within 2 years, we had already gone tribal way. Because by the time we are doing referendum, it was 41 against 41 against 1. That's how the referendum was lost by the government in 2005. And in 2007 was the climax of ethnic politics. Even in so many FM stations, they were talking ethnic, talking about all those who are not supporting us. They are married from the same community that is fighting us. You know, when you get to that level, then you realize the country has degenerated. I'm not perfect, but at least I've been swimming above the waters. And that's why they say I don't support people from my community. I don't support you just because you talk the same language in vernacular that I talk. Whatever I've gotten, it has been the support of others, not necessarily from my community.
Waziri,
Yes.
just a quick one. There was a season in our politics where, you know, people were saying enough is enough. We're done with these old people. We need to kick them out. We need fresh blood, meaning we need young people to occupy legislative positions in cabinet and so on and so forth. I'm looking at the average age of President Ruto's cabinet, and it's 55 years. The average age of MPs currently is 48 years. In the Senate, it's 50 years. You look at the age distribution and the blend of youthful energy and seasoned professional experience in the national leadership. And the disappointment here is you look at even the debates in Parliament among this age distribution, and we are now all of a sudden going back and saying we miss the old days when we had these old people having very healthy debates in Parliament because it's become a circus. What do you, in your opinion, see as the next theme? Because there's always, in every political season and every election cycle, there's always a theme. What do you see as the next theme?
Well, apart from the rallying call that I don't want to mention because I respect your station, the most important thing is for us to promote integrity and moral probity. When you see a member of parliament going for a fake university education, I'm not saying everybody must have a degree in a country, but when you see a member of parliament going for a fake university certificate and in a fake institution, then that is the lowest moral bar that we have laid for ourselves. When you see individuals going to certain universities and also Kenyans elect them knowing that they don't have the requisite university education. And I think we have about 6 governors today whose credentials are questionable. why don't we accept that whatever qualification you have, you merit? Number two, we were in one-party system, but President Moi was very strict. If you were to ask a question for money, or refuse to ask a question because you've been paid not to ask the question, you'd actually be taken to court. That's why some members of parliament ran away from this country, because either rightly or wrongly, they were accused of making false mileage claims. But those bars have been removed. Today, when there is a Aseto chief, knowing that he has enough audit queries that he ought to answer in parliament, he will have to look for money to oil the process, so that the questions are dropped and is asked less questions than the questions would have been asked. If that happened during the tenure of Mzee Moi, you as a member of parliament picking money in order not to ask the question, we would actually be taken to court. But today, money exchanges hands. That's why somebody wants to be a member of a committee and to chair that committee, so that he privileges himself. Within no time, he has 7 Prados, he has all the vehicles that,
that you can imagine.
He had to drive.
And these are the things that we need to actually continue pointing out. We can't stop having these conversations. It's necessary to do. And we want to thank you that you were able to do that with us this morning. Time does run short, but it's good that we could.
But I just beg one thing.
Quickly,
Don't get rid of all the people just because you are young faces. Let us have a blend of society.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Way to look into it. Kipruto Arab Kirua, former Minister for Agriculture, has been our guest this hour and closing it out for us on the Situation Room this morning. Thank you. Join us again tomorrow. It's 10:01.
Samira. 81% of Trans Nzoia County residents are yet to register with the Social Health Authority, according to county officials. The County Director of Health, Dr. Isaac Kisiangani, is urging the residents to enroll with SHA in order to